Chapter 134. Gu Duxing stopped. What? Was he the one who taught you all these improvements? Was he the one who taught you all these improvements? GMO asked in exasperation. Of course. Gu Duxing was very proud. I joined. GMO heaved a sigh of relief. Motherfucker. Just to defeat you and avenge that sword of yours. This old man also joined. Damn it, I'll just be your subordinate for a few years. Gu Duxing's eyes showed a trace of satisfaction. What's the name of this organization? It's not small, right? GMO sat down on the ground and took deep breaths. His eyes flashed with excitement. What's the name of the boss? Which senior from Upper Three Heavens is it? Since he had decided to join, GMO's interest in this organization grew. In GMO's mind, someone who could make Gu Duxing improve like a rocket and give him special improvements must be an earth-shattering figure. And definitely an invincible existence. The organization established by such a person would certainly be very big and very powerful. Such a person would have already established his own sect in the Upper Three Heavens. He wouldn't have the time to set up a new organization. Therefore, it must be some senior from the Upper Three Heavens who wanted to have some fun after a long period of silence. GMO was very curious. The organization is called Heavenly Armament Pavilion. There are many divine weapons there. Every one of them can cut through gold and jade. My black dragon can't be compared to those weapons at all. Those weapons are just legends. Gu Duxing said coolly. Ah, really? Doesn't that mean I have a chance to get a legendary divine weapon? GMO's eyes shone full of expectation, thinking of himself holding an invincible weapon and sweeping the world in Jianghu, and the envious gazes of others. Especially those bastards from Upper Three Heavens who used to be on the same level as him. Looking at him with admiration, thinking of this, GMO almost wanted to go crazy. Yes, you do have a chance. Gu Duxing thought for a while and said, but with your lazy personality and rascal temper, and your attitude of not standing if you can sit and not sitting if you can lie down, I reckon the chance is not big. How come I'm like that? GMO was unconvinced. I've always been very serious. Gu Duxing rolled his eyes. Hey brother Gu, we'll be considered to be on the same boat in the future. Why are you keeping it a secret from me? GMO said with a drooling face. Tell me, which senior expert is the boss? Emperor level? Monarch level? Every time he asked, Gu Duxing would shake his head. Asterisk asterisk. Could it be a saint? GMO's voice trembled, and his eyes emitted a wolf-like green light. He was so surprised that even his hands and feet were trembling. He knew Gu Duxing's character. Apart from the Gu clan, no one else had any hope of subduing him. Or the emperor level. There was still a tiny bit of hope. As for the monarch level and king level below the emperor level, there was no need to even mention them. He was neither an emperor level nor a monarch level. Could it really be a saint? Mother, your son is really lucky this time. To be able to work under a saint-level expert and learn martial arts. GMO almost fainted from happiness. He's not a saint either. Gu Duxing said concisely. Great Master Gu, Grandfather Gu. Please tell me. GMO stood up and diligently massaged Gu Duxing's shoulders. He said with a flattering smile, Brother Gu, please tell me. His voice was so coquettish that it made Gu Duxing shiver. Get lost. Don't discuss me like this. Gu Duxing said angrily. Then he turned his neck in pleasure. Over there, a little to the right, use more strength. A little lower, a little higher. A little to the left. Finally, after enjoying a super high-level massage, GMO asked while panting, Boss, you should tell me now, right? Yes. Gu Duxing's face became serious. GMO held his breath and looked at Gu Duxing's mouth. He was full of expectation as he waited for the news that would definitely shock him. He's not an emperor level, nor a monarch level, and definitely not a saint level. Gu Duxing said slowly. Oh my, you've learned how to trick people. GMO was so anxious that his head was sweating and his palms were hot. What kind of earth-shaking person is he? Just tell me. Even if he's a supreme level expert, I can still handle this surprise. Yes, he seems to be a 7th grade martial warrior right now. He should be there by now. Gu Duxing said seriously. Sure enough, it's just as I expected. Hi. GMO was ready to laugh out loud. Then he was tongue-tied. He opened his mouth and used so much force that his lips almost split open. What did you say? You didn't hear wrong. Boss is a martial warrior. Gu Duxing said indifferently. GMO clearly heard the sound of his chin hitting the ground. He forced a smile and said while stammering, Brother Gu, Grandpa Gu. What a joke. How can you say that? This is true. I'm not joking. Gu Duxing said seriously. I'm telling the truth. With a thud, GMO fell to the ground and said in pain, Gu Duxing, just kill me. Suddenly he jumped up and gritted his teeth. Gu Duxing, you're good. You're really promising. Not bad, not bad. GMO, just realized that you, Gu Duxing, are actually such a great person. He nodded fiercely, not bad, not bad. Not bad at all. Running out of the lower three heavens with a martial great master cultivation to be a subordinate of a martial warrior from the lower three heavens. You really make me unable to believe it. If this were to spread out, you would be the idol of all the old women in the lower three heavens. Stop talking nonsense. We should hurry. Gu Duxing said coldly. I regret it. GMO sat on the ground and shook his head like a rattle. I'm not going. Are you going or not? Gu Duxing's eyes narrowed and emitted a dangerous aura. He was about to make a move. I won't go even if you beat me to death. GMO said fiercely. Good, you said it. Gu Duxing didn't use his sword and directly flew up with his bare hands. Puff 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 puff. I won't go even if you beat me to death. Puff puff. Puff 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 puff. Are you going or not? Not going. Puff puff puff. Stop hitting me. Woo. Are you going or not? I'm going. Gu Duxing finally stopped while panting and scolded, cheap? You are cheap. If I don't beat you up, you'll be dead. Whoa. GMO lay on the grass sadly. I'm cheap? Let me beat you up instead? Didn't you say that you won't go even if I beat you to death? You're not dead yet. I said that I won't go even if you beat me to death. As long as I don't die, I'll go. GMO shouted and thought angrily in his heart. If you didn't beat me like this, I really wouldn't go. A real man keeps his words. But if it's too hard to bear, I can also go back on my words. Get up. Do you think it's nice to lie on the ground with your butt sticking out? Hurry up, we still have to find someone else. Gu Duxing kicked him impatiently. GMO jumped up with a cry and said, You still have to find someone else? Yes, go and pull Little Wolf in. Gu Duxing stepped forward slowly. Little Wolf? Luo Kudi? GMO couldn't help but rub his palms together. That's right. That guy has had enough of being his big brother's punching bag in the Luo family. I support you in this matter, Dugu. He thought to himself, I'm not the only one who has been deceived. It's better to have fun together than to have fun alone. I will definitely support Dugu and pull that guy down with me. Even if I have to rebel in the future, at least I have one more ally, right? Thinking of this, GMO happily followed behind Gu Duxing's butt. In the blink of an eye, 2 days passed. In these 2 days, Chu Yang sent people to watch the movements of HMO every day. What annoyed him was that the group of bastards living here just didn't want to leave. And he didn't know where the other group went. Originally there were 14 people, but now there were 7 people living here. Not only did they not leave, but their movements in Iron Cloud Citadel became even more frequent. They were everywhere day and night. This made Chu Yang very unhappy. If they didn't leave, Mo Qingwu could only stay in the secret room. Wouldn't that suffocate her? Chu Yang thought for a long time and decided to pay them a visit. Just think of it as burning incense to attract ghosts. I'll burn incense to send the ghosts away. Teacher letting them stay here was really not a good idea. Minister Chu ordered someone to make a gift and had someone carry it. Then he walked to the biggest inn in Iron Cloud, Cloudgate Inn. It was as if a noble family was traveling. Even Butian Pavilion's Iron Blood Torture Hall members did not know that the person they were following right now was their immediate superior. The king of Hell Chu, who made their brothers tremble at the mention of his name. Yin Wu Fe's belly was about to explode from anger. This king-level master of Golden Horse Riders Department felt that he had never been so angry in his life. The 3 of them arrived at Iron Cloud last night. Since they were exhausted, they first found an inn to stay in. The place they chose to stay was even specially chosen. It was not far from Butian Pavilion. It faced each other from a distance. After they settled down, Yin Wu Fe did not have time to make any preparations. He immediately ordered for the people of Golden Horse Riders Department in Iron Cloud to see him. In the end, they went to several secret meeting rooms, but they were all empty. Not a single person could be found. In Wu Fa was filled with anger. He ordered the other two people to follow the secret signals. The result was that 80% of the signals had been tampered with or completely disappeared. It was not until midnight that they were able to contact him. Moreover, he was like a frightened bird. Sun Chongfa, who was a martial master, had tears and snot running down his face when he saw the king-level expert. King-level master, it is not that we did not do our job well. It is that King of Hell Chu is too cruel. There were a total of people under me, and they were divided into 3 groups. They were all single groups and they didn't know each other. I was very cautious. On that day, Lu Xiaosan and Deng Xiaowu suddenly disappeared. They only found out the next morning that Lord Wu, who was in charge of contacting them, was imprisoned, and his whole family was executed. Their original place of residence was also raided, and the business they used to hide was also closed. Chapter 135. Sun Zhongfa's face was mournful. I had just sent out the news when I saw De Li He and Peng Huihui coming to me with pale faces and pale lips. They said that Lu Xiaosan, Deng Xiaowu, and Zhang Neng's heads were hung on the city walls, but Li Shun's head was not. Then I heard that Li Shun's team was uprooted from top to bottom. King-level leader, more than 40 people, they all died. Sun Zhongfa's entire body trembled. Tomorrow Li He also disappeared. Peng Huihui wandered around for half a day before leaving. Then he found Li He dead in a forest. Peng Huihui came back to tell me, and in a short time I was surrounded by Butian Pavilion. Luckily I had a secret passage to escape, but Peng Huihui was also gone. In other words, your team should have had more than 10 people, but now there is no one left? You are the only one left? In Wu Fa was angry at first, but as he listened, he felt that the situation was serious. Not to mention anything else, Butian Pavilion's actions were too fast. As soon as they found a clue, they began to pursue and kill until there was no one left. Not to mention the others, Sun Zhongfa's team had nearly 100 people. As an outside intelligence organization of Golden Horse Riders Department, it could be considered a large department. Plus, they were very cautious. All 3 departments had been in contact with each other. This was the safest method. But it was still within 2 days. Yes, In Wu Fa had been calculating since Sun Zhongfa started to talk. 2 days. In just 2 days they were all caught in one fell swoop. I am the only one left. Sun Zhongfa was a little dejected. As for the other departments, I only have one-way contact with them. I do not know if there are any other departments. However, during this time blood has flowed like a river. Besides the officials who raided their homes, we also killed nearly 400 people. I estimate that these 400 people should be our spies in Iron Cloud Citadel. Sun Zhongfa shivered. If we calculate according to the scale of my team for 100 people, including my 5 teams, they were all wiped out. King-level leader. I went to the execution field every day to count the heads. Every day the number of heads increased by a lot. As the head of a department, Sun Zhongfa naturally had a certain amount of ability. His deduction. It was almost in line with the current facts. But because of this, he did not dare to show himself. Even when they saw the secret signal, they didn't dare to respond. They even disguised themselves and deliberately bumped into the wall, smashing their faces beyond recognition. In Wu Fa's anger gradually calmed down. The worse the situation was, the calmer he became. In his hands he had the information of all the contacts in Iron Cloud. He remembered it clearly. Iron Cloud Citadel had 3 silver horse riders and 5 iron horse riders. The silver horse knights couldn't move, so only the iron horse knights were left. Of the 5 iron horse knights, one of them was the chief commander, while the other 4 each had 2 intelligence sources under them. This was the strategy that Diwu Qingro had adopted when establishing the Golden Horse Riders Department. The 2 intelligence agencies had to be separated. No one could know each other. The 4 Iron Horse Knights were also strangers to each other. Each of them was only responsible for the leader. This Sun Chongfa was the leader of one of the 2 intelligence forces under one of the Iron Horse Knights. He was also the first person In Wu Fa found in Iron Cloud Citadel. If there were a total of 8 intelligence sources, then according to Sun Wufa, at least 5 of them had been destroyed. There were only 3 strands left. This king of Hell Chu was really fast. There was a light knock on the door. Yin Wu Fa snorted and the door opened. A man dressed entirely in black entered in a flash and asked, "May I know which lord is in front of you?" Yin Wu Fa looked at him for a while. He flipped his hand and a small jade tablet appeared on the table. On it, 5 gems formed a small throne. Next to it was the word 3. So it is the 3rd king level leader. Forgive me for my lack of manners. The man in black was shocked and quickly knelt down. Stand up and tell me about your situation. This man in black was the Iron Horse Rider that the 2 revered martial artists found. Right now, the 2 revered martial artists were still outside. It would have been fine if he didn't speak, but once he did, Yin Wu Fa's nose became crooked again. This Iron Horse Rider had lost more than half of his 2 intelligence sources. There were still many who surrendered. There were less than 10 people who could be used. Good, very good. You have all done well. Yin Wu Fa clenched his teeth. His right hand, which was placed flat on the table, slowly sank into the table and silently created a palm-sized hole. The Iron Horse Rider stood to the side and did not dare to breathe loudly. The atmosphere was very heavy. After a short while, 2 more Iron Horse Knights arrived. Soon after, the commander arrived as well. After that, no one else came. Not long after, the 2 revered martial artists also hurried back. With heavy expressions they said, "King-level leader, the last Iron Horse Rider has been destroyed. All of his intelligence sources have been wiped out." Good. What a good king of Hell Chu. Truly vicious and merciless. Yin Wu Fa was so angry that he laughed. Before coming here, all of the higher-ups of Golden Horse Riders Department speculated that their intelligence network in Iron Cloud would be severely damaged. But they did not think that it would be to such an extent. More than half of it was destroyed. Who is in charge of contacting Official Tang? Yin Wu Fa asked. Official Tang did not allow us to take the initiative to contact him. Plus, Official Tang's whereabouts are unknown. We have asked around but have not heard anything about Official Tang's whereabouts. The commander of the Iron Horse Riders respectfully said, "Oh, it seems that Official Tang's situation is not looking good." Yin Wu Fa sighed deeply. He said, "Let me see if you can gather any information about King of Hell Chu." The 4 people looked at each other and exposed a bitter smile on their faces. Then they said, "We all know that the main hall has sent people to deal with King of Hell Chu. But this matter is extremely confusing, cough cough." The commander of the Iron Horse Riders looked very depressed. "What is it?" "This King of Hell Chu, cough cough. There is a lot of information about him." The 4 people took out a thick stack of information and placed it on the table in front of Yin Wu Fa, covering the handprint that was left on the table. A lot of information? Yin Wu Fa looked at the 1-foot-thick stack of documents. His usually gloomy face suddenly changed, and his eyes widened as he read through it. So much. Yin Wu Fa could not believe it. "Yes, king-level leader, I feel that it is not complete." The 4 people looked ashamed. "Not so much." Yin Wu Fa was speechless. He looked at the thick stack of information with hundreds of thousands of words. "To not complete? Is this King of Hell Chu an old monster who has lived for tens of thousands of years? How can there be so much information?" "Sit down, I will look at the information." Yin Wu Fa was angry, but he could not do anything. The 4 of them sat down obediently. Sun Zhong Fa also wanted to sit down, but just as his butt touched the edge of the chair, he heard Yin Wu Fa snap his fingers. Then a revered martial artist appeared in front of him. Then he did not know what happened. With a cracking sound, his neck was broken. The revered martial artist seemed to have done something insignificant. He carried the body and floated out. The 4 Iron Horse Riders felt their scalps tingle. Then their bodies relaxed. Their subordinates did not have the opportunity to see them. Today this guy actually saw all 4 of them. Even if Yin Wu Fa did not deal with the 4 of them, he would not let Sun Zhong Fa live. No matter how loyal you are, it is not as good as being loyal to yourself. Bang. Yin Wu Fa slapped the table and turned around as if he wanted to eat someone. "This is the information you collected on King of Hell Chu?" Oh. Cold sweat appeared on the foreheads of the 4 people. "Bastard, what kind of mess is this?" Yin Wu Fa rarely got angry, but this time he could not control himself. King of Hell Chu's information was too messy. King of Hell Chu face unknown. He often wears a ferocious mask and a black robe. His name is Chu Yang, 10 years and 8 months old. It is said that he came from beyond the heavens sect. He is the little brother of Meng Chao Ran, the master of Purple Bamboo Academy. Later, because he was jealous of his martial brother, he accidentally killed his martial brother and was expelled from the academy. He came to Iron Cloud. This was a small piece of information. King of Hell Chu face unknown. He often wears a ferocious mask and a black robe. It is said that his name is Chu Yang, 22 years old. It is said that he is the disciple of Qi Chung Xian, the great scholar of Hong He. He is knowledgeable and resourceful, but not good at martial arts. He was recommended to Tai Butian and entered Butian Pavilion. Another piece of information. King of Hell Chu face unknown. He often wears a ferocious mask and a black robe. It is said that his name is Chu Yang, 21 years old. It is said that he is the disciple of a reclusive emperor-level master. Although he is young, he is already a martial great master. It is said that he is a martial arts genius. This was another piece of information. King of Hell Chu face unknown. He often wears a ferocious mask and a black robe. It is said that his name is Chu Yang, 10 years old. He is the #1 general of the continent Tai Long Chengyi. He has been practicing martial arts since he was a child. He is Tai Butian's right-hand man. Tai Long Cheng hid him for more than 10 years. This was another piece of information. King of Hell Chu face unknown. He often wears a ferocious mask and a black robe. It is said that his name is Chu Yang, the descendant of the Chu clan. He came out to gain experience and entered Butian Pavilion. In fact, this King of Hell Chu had more than 20 different backgrounds. This King of Hell Chu has more than 20 different backgrounds. Moreover, at the back of each piece of information, there were testimonies from witnesses. How could King-level Master Yi not go crazy with anger when he heard such news? So many King of Hell Chus? Which one is real? Or was that document real? There is only one King of Hell Chu. This is the information you have compiled about King of Hell Chu? Yin Wu Fa slapped the thick pile of information on the table. His voice was cold. Chapter 136. Chu Yang's seemingly useless trick had played its intended role at this moment. The whole matter had become complicated and confusing. This king-level master of the Golden Horse Riders Department felt as if he was having a big headache. Yin Wu Fa's anger had reached its peak. He glared fiercely at the 4 people in front of him. He tried his best to gasp for breath, suppressing the rising killing intent in his heart. He was really a little worried. He was worried that if he couldn't control his temper, he would smash these 4 people into minced meat. You call this information? Isn't this playing with this king-level expert? You think that this information is all about the same person? Yin Wu Fa's voice became very gentle in his anger. The 4 people were sweating and did not dare to sit down. They stood up with their heads down and lined up in a row as if they had committed a crime. Do you think that this king-level leader is so stupid that he thinks that a pile of dog poop is rice? Yin Wu Fa's voice became colder and colder, like the cold wind from hell. Martial Brother Hui of Beyond the Heavens sect, a weak scholar under a great scholar, Martial Emperor's Martial Great Brother Hui, the #1 general, the Grand Duke of the 3 Heavens Chu clan. Yin Wu Fa counted with his fingers. These are all about this King Yen Chu? The 4 people's heads hung even lower. Raise your heads. Yin Wu Fa shouted angrily. The 4 people reflexively raised their heads, and they only saw a shadow in front of them. Pa-pa-pa-pa. After a series of slaps, Yin Wu Fa was back in his chair. The 4 iron horse riders' faces were red and swollen. They all gulped and swallowed the blood and teeth that came out of their mouths into their stomachs. At this moment, each person was slapped at least a dozen times. King-level leader. This King Yen Chu is really mysterious. The leader of the Iron Horse Riders gathered his courage and said with a trembling voice, even in Butian Pavilion, very few people know what he looks like. This information, he stammered, this information. We have already gone through the greatest amount of screening before. Shut up. Yin Wu Fa was furious. The room was silent. This information is simply illogical. Especially this Beyond the Heavens sex. King-level Master Yin showed his superior wisdom at this time. Who is King of Hell Chu? He is resourceful, insidious, and cunning. He will do anything to achieve his goal. He is scheming and wise. Would such a person fight for a woman's affection and kill his own great master? King Level Mastering angrily said, "Are you all pigs?" How could he believe that? He actually placed this document at the very front? Do you think I'm a pig like you? In Wu Fa grabbed the Chu Yen Return to Beyond the Heaven Sect document and tore it to pieces. He rubbed it in his hand and threw it out. It hit the head of the leader of the Iron Horse Riders and bounced back 3 feet. Then it hit the head of another Iron Horse Rider. The other 2 were also hit by the ball of paper and fell to the ground. Their foreheads swelled up at a speed visible to the naked eye, making them look like 4 unicorns. King Level Master Yin's ability to control his power was truly shocking. King Level Master is wise. Gao Hui's vision is far greater than mine. The 4 of them bowed together. They all had some opinions in their hearts. The document from Beyond the Heaven Sect was first-hand information. It was also the first document from King of Hell Chu. It was very reliable, so the 4 of them placed it at the very front. I did not expect that the first document to be rejected by King Level Master Yin would be this one. Get lost. In Wu Fa angrily said, "When I get back, I will definitely investigate who sent you to Iron Cloud as spies. Someone who does not know how to read people's minds, who is so ignorant, who does not pay attention to strategy actually sent you. You are so stupid that the sun and moon lose their light. How could you not die from your stupidity? Fuck." The 2 revered martial artists on the side moved their lips. They really wanted to say, "King Level Master, their direct superior is the Command Horse Rider Zhou Gang, and Master Zhou is your right-hand man. If you investigate, you will find out that he is your subordinate." The 4 Iron Horse Riders obviously thought of the same thing. Their lips moved, but who dared to say it? "What do you want to say?" In Wu Fa's face was ashen. "Who is your direct superior? Which hall of the Night Hall? Speak." Golden Horse Riders Department 3rd Pavilion, Command Horse 2nd Division, Command Horse Group. The leader of the Iron Horse Riders trembled as he spoke. Golden Horse Riders Department 3rd Pavilion, Command Horse 2nd Division, Command Horse Group. In Wu Fa angrily said, "When I go back I will..." Huh? Halfway through his words, he remembered that Golden Horse Riders Department was divided into 4 pavilions. Each of the 4 king-level masters was in charge of 1 pavilion. The 3rd pavilion was under his command. Get lost. Get lost. Get lost. King-level Master Yin wasn't young anymore. His skin had become thicker after so many years of experience. But he still felt his face turn red at this moment. He was angry, ashamed, and angry. So he kicked these guys out with a few bang sounds. He sat back in his chair, sulking. After a while, he slammed his fist on the table. He gritted his teeth and said, "Zhou Gang, I will skin you alive." "King Level Master, what should we do?" a revered martial artist cautiously asked. These 2 people were In Wu Fa's right-hand men. Even though they were not masters, their enmity was close. They had followed In Wu Fa for many years. Because of their relationship, they spoke casually in front of In Wu Fa. Plus, they were all part of the 3rd pavilion, so this was an internal matter. I don't believe that this King of Hell Chu is so mysterious. Could it be that the people of Butian Pavilion don't know what their minister looks like? In Wu Fa immediately calmed down and said, "Tomorrow, I will go out and personally capture a traitor. I will punish him and beat him. Then I will know who this King of Hell Chu is." First, rest. In Wu Fa was silent for a while. Then he suddenly laughed and said, "I can't believe that the root of all this is still me. What a joke." The 2 revered martial artists also laughed and said, "King Level Master is concentrating on cultivation. These trivial matters are always handled by your subordinates. It is normal to overlook them. Even the other king level experts may not know their subordinates well. This isn't a big deal. Moreover, our Golden Horse Riders Department is getting bigger and bigger. If the king level experts want to know each and every one of them, I'm afraid they won't be able to do anything else in this lifetime. King level master, you don't need to take it to heart." Haha, you are right. I was originally just an assassin leader. I only had 5 subordinates. Now I have thousands of subordinates. I'm really busy. In Wu Fa laughed self-deprecatingly and said, You guys should also go and rest. You must be tired after such a long journey. The two bowed at the same time and left the room. It was a quiet night. The next day, Wuxia left the inn early. He looked at the main gate of Butian Pavilion from a distance. He thought to himself, as long as one person wearing a mask comes out, I will immediately make my move. Who cares if it is him or not? Once I kill enough, there will be one. Who would have thought that from morning until noon? The main gate of Butian Pavilion was like a market. Countless people came in and out, but not a single one was wearing a mask. Moreover, as soon as they came out, they were in groups. It was obvious that they were very disciplined. Next to them, there were two barracks in a pincer formation. The defense of Butian Pavilion was indeed top-notch. Wuxia watched from a distance and felt that this was a difficult situation. It was like a mouse trying to pull a turtle. He had no idea where to start. He may be a king-level expert, but there is a limit to his strength. He may be powerful, but it is impossible for him to go against a well-disciplined army by himself. Moreover, it is obvious that if he were to make a move here, he would only need to shout, and thousands of people would rush out from the two barracks and surround him. Even if he was a king-level master, if he was surrounded by the army, he would still die without a doubt. Wuxia looked at Butian Pavilion and could not make up his mind. If he really could not do it, he would go back to the inn and wait until nighttime to make his move. But before he came out, he had boasted in front of his two subordinates. If he went back like this, how could he keep his face? Moreover, the two of them were currently searching everywhere for a map of Butian Pavilion. In order to assassinate Chu Yan, they were very busy. Just as he was hesitating, King-level Master Yin's eyes suddenly lit up. From the main gate of Butian Pavilion, two people were walking out. One was empty-handed, and the other was carrying a gift box. They were hurrying toward him. Seemed like they were going to the outer city. The one walking in front was a young man in a black robe. He had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He was tall and seemed to have some power. Although he was young, he was definitely the descendant of a high-ranking official. This kind of person must be a core member of Butian Pavilion. If I can capture him, won't all my problems be solved? Wuxia's eyes lit up. Truly, heaven never bars one's way. Chu Yang brought along Ku Hui from the Hall of Ironblood as a follower. He was preparing to visit the people from the Mo clan. Along the way, Chu Yang thought to himself, that king-level master of the Mo clan seemed to have a good impression of me. Will there be any unexpected gains from this visit? As for the fact that they heard Mo Qingwu, I will definitely settle the score. But before I settle the score, it is not bad to collect some interest. Regarding this trip, Chu Yang had already made up his mind. After going there, how to deal with them? Chu Yang already had a plan in mind. Haha, as long as I do this, I will be able to do that. Minister Chu couldn't wait to see the wonderful scene that he was imagining. So he took a big step forward. Naturally, he did not know that not far ahead, there was a king of hell waiting for him to turn around and force him to reveal the whereabouts of King Yen Chu. Of course, Wuxia would never have guessed that this seemingly weak young man in black was his main goal in coming to Iron Cloud, King of Hell Chu. As long as he could kill him, his mission would be complete. Instead, he was in high spirits as he saw King of Hell Chu walking towards him. He was planning in his heart. Once I capture him, I'll ruthlessly punish him. I'll interrogate him about King of Hell Chu's whereabouts and the true situation. Then I'll kill him. Chapter 137. Wuxia was even more cautious as he hid his presence. Even though he was sure that this young man would not be able to detect him, he was used to being cautious as an assassin. Before he made a move, he was used to making sure everything was perfectly prepared. In front of them was a fork in the road. People were coming and going. It was very lively. In the eyes of an ordinary person, this was not a good place to make a move. There were too many people. Even if he succeeded, people would see his face and put him on the wanted list. But in the eyes of an expert like Wuxia, this fork in the road was very dangerous. It was the best place to make a move. The more people there were, the better cover. Wuxia was completely confident that as long as he made a move, no one would be able to see him clearly. Therefore, Wuxia's body flashed, and he silently went to a corner of the fork in the road, waiting for the rabbit to appear. Ever since Chu Yang left, he faintly felt that something was not right. It was as if someone was secretly watching him, but it was very weak. Plus, there were many people watching Butian Pavilion every day. This kind of situation happened from time to time, so Chu Yang did not take it to heart. Sir, where are we going? Sha Dan, who was following behind as a follower, felt a little indignant. Fuck, I'm still a Hall of Steel Veins felon. Even if he's a relative of the royal family, as long as he's targeted by the King of Hell, I can still beat him to a pulp. Now, I have become the follower of a little brat who is still wet behind the ears. This is too hurtful to my pride. Don't talk too much. You just follow behind me. Chu Yang said casually. Right now he was inexplicably upset. The closer they got to the fork in the road, the more his heart pounded. Just as he was thinking about what was wrong, this guy suddenly opened his mouth and interrupted Chu Yang's train of thought. This guy carried the gift box and lazily stood up. Invisibly, he was half a foot behind Chu Yang. Motherfucker, do you think you are some big shot? Seeing this arrogant young man turn the corner, the follower could only sigh and follow. No matter what, this was a task given to him by the minister. He could not be negligent. Who knew that as soon as he turned the corner, his mouth would open wide in shock? Oh my God! Where did that guy go? In front of his eyes, people were coming and going. The street was filled with people, but Chu Yang's shadow was nowhere to be seen. The little girl was dumbfounded. What should she do? Where did that creamy little fellow go? The attendant carried the gift box and stood in a daze at the intersection of the three forks of the street. He felt that his mind had stopped working. This guy is missing. How am I going to explain this to King of Hell Chu? Thinking of his miserable life after returning home, this guy suddenly felt as if his soul had left his body. After being stunned for a while, he rushed into the crowd and asked everyone he saw, "Have you seen a handsome young man in black?" Chu Yang had just turned the corner when his vision suddenly darkened. A strong sense of crisis arose in his heart. Then he suddenly felt that he couldn't move his body. A big hand grabbed his shoulder, and a copious amount of strength instantly surged into his limbs and bones. He couldn't even move his little finger in an instant. Only a desperate thought flashed through his mind. Oh no! He had been caught. Immediately after, he felt his body leave the ground and fly up. A person held him under his armpit. With a swoosh he was in the air. When he came down again, he was already more than 10 feet away from the three-way junction. So fast. Such concealment. He must be a king-level master. No wonder he didn't notice the good news. At this time, only Di Wuqing Ro's men came to catch him. Golden Horse Riders Department's men. Chu Yang calmly closed his eyes. He bitterly smiled in his heart. I still talk about playing with the world and reversing fate. Now that I've fallen into the enemy's hands, how can I have any hope of survival? It seems that I really have to die before my ambitions are fulfilled. Chu Yang only felt strange. Who betrayed me? I've been pretending to be mysterious for so long, and the effect has always been good. Why was I caught so accurately? He felt as if he was riding on a cloud. After a while, he felt that he had landed in an abandoned house. Bang! Chu Yang was thrown to the ground. He only felt that his whole body was relaxed. Except for the fact that he couldn't use his energy, he could already speak and move. How could this be? Why didn't they kill me? Chu Yang was very puzzled. According to the current situation, Golden Horse Riders Department should hate me to the bone. If they caught me, I'm afraid they would chop me into minced meat. In fact, they didn't even need to catch me. They only needed to kill me. But the current situation clearly showed that they wanted to ask questions. What's going on? While he was thinking, a thin face suddenly appeared in front of him. His eyebrows were ferocious, and his eyes were long and thin. His eyes emitted a cold light as he fiercely stared at Chu Yang's eyes. This person's appearance was too ugly. He looked like a zombie. However, the aura that the other person emitted told Chu Yang that this person was a top expert. At least his aura was much stronger than Tang Xiansheng's aura. Moreover, his murderous aura was thick and sharp. His body had a cold aura. This was a top assassin. Moreover, he was a king-level assassin. Chu Yang's heart turned cold. The moment the other party showed up, he immediately guessed. This is probably one of the 4 king-level Gao Shenti of the 10 halls of golden horse riders sent by Niu Qingro to deal with me. Moreover, he is the one who is good at hiding and assassination. I was too careless. I shouldn't have been so careless. Little one, listen. I will ask you a question and you will answer. As long as you cooperate, you will suffer less pain. Do you understand? King-level Master Yin looked at the little guy in front of him and revealed a cruel smile. At such a young age, you are already a martial artist. It seems that your family background is not bad, and your aptitude is not bad. However, under my command, how can a little first-grade martial artist struggle? Naturally, it will be easy to capture you. Huh? Chu Yang was surprised. Ask a question and answer a question? Do you still need to ask me after catching me? Chu Yang's heart churned. Suddenly, he was overjoyed. Could it be that this guy doesn't know who I am? Thinking of this, Chu Yang suddenly revealed a cowardly appearance. He said in a trembling voice, Senior, what do you want to ask? I will tell you everything I know. I will tell you everything I know. Don't stutter. Yin Wufe unhappily scolded. Look at your cowardly appearance. Let me ask you, what is your surname? My surname is Chao. Chu Yang was overjoyed. He said in a trembling voice, my name is Chao Gua. I didn't ask for your name. Yin Wufe unhappily said, let me ask you, is your Butian Pavilion's minister, Chu Yang, in Butian Pavilion right now? Minister? Chu Yang immediately calmed down and said, Minister is not here. May I ask why you are looking for Minister? To kill him. Yin Wufe snorted and closed in. He coldly said, if you are not obedient, I do not mind killing you first. Understood? Understood. Chu Yang repeatedly nodded. Now tell me in detail about your king of Hell Chu. Yin Wufe glared. If there is even a little bit missing, haha, take a look at this. Yin Wufei's hand gripped a hard blue stone. He exerted some force, and the hard blue stone turned into powder. The powder dripped down from the gaps between his fingers. Can your head be stronger than this rock? He asked. I can't. Then tell me. Yin Wufe was very pleased with himself. He secretly praised himself for finding the right target. Looking at this little oily face, he was definitely not someone who could keep a secret. Sure enough, he was scared out of his wits just by scaring him. King of Hell Chu. King of Hell Chu. Sigh, King of Hell Chu is really not a good person. Chu Yang's eyes were filled with hatred as he said, that guy is not human. Too ruthless, too cruel, too inhumane. Oh. Speaking of which, Minister Chu is a minister. He is very capable. No one in Butian Pavilion disagrees with this, but his teaching, Sai being under him is simply torture. Chu Tsong wanted to cry but had no tears. Yin Wufe coldly snorted and looked at him from the corner of his eyes. He thought to himself, only with iron will one be able to create a first-class army. What does a pretty boy like you know about this kind of thing? He impatiently said, get to the point. Yes, King of Hell Chu usually wears a mask and a loose black robe. We do not know what he looks like. He has always been very mysterious. Chu Yang secretly raised his head to look at Yin Wufei's face and said, that time, I went in to deliver some information, and I saw Minister Chu taking off his mask and fixing his hair. Oh? You really saw King of Hell Chu? Yin Wufei's spirit was lifted, and he became even more spirited. Yes, King of Hell Chu's face was very thin, but his eyes were very spirited. Plus, his eyes always carried a sinister aura. It made people shudder when they looked at him. Chu Yang rolled his eyes as if he was trying his best to recall, but what he said was the appearance of the Heimo King-level leader. Yin Wufe rubbed his chin and concentrated. In an instant, the image of a cold, sinister, authoritative, calm, and cruel leader formed in his mind. That's right. This is in line with the 3 words King of Hell Chu. How old was he? It's like this. Minister Chu always told us to spread false information, saying that he was around 20 years old or 18 years old to confuse the enemy. But that day I was really scared out of my wits. Because Chu Yang wanted to say something but stopped. Because what? Yin Wufe anxiously asked. It is really unbelievable. King of Hell Chu's real age seems to be at least 30 years old. Chu Yang revealed a contemplative expression, saying that he is 40, is also not wrong. That makes sense. In Wu Fa felt that he had discovered a big secret. His eyes flashed. He thought to himself 17 or 18 years of age to have such achievements. Even an old man would not believe it. Do you really think that all geniuses are like Tai Butian? Chapter 138. Plus, Minister Chu's face is always as cold as ice. It is as if the whole world owes him something. Chu Yang said, and In Wu Fa nodded. He always frowns, so there are 3 vertical lines between his eyebrows. Chu Yang described the appearance of the Heimo King level leader in great detail. In Wu Fa felt the same way. He was in charge of Butian Pavilion, and he had to fight against Golden Horse Riders Department, which was not on the same level. It would be strange if he did not frown. Even though the pressure was not as great as In Wu Fa's, he still frowned a lot. In Wu Fa unconsciously reached out and touched his own eyebrows. He is not very tall, but because he is thin, he looks tall to others. Chu Yang continued. When does he usually come out? Or when does he come to Butian Pavilion? In Wu Fa interrupted him. What Chu Yang said was enough for him to recognize King of Hell Chu at a glance. What he needed now was King of Hell Chu's work schedule and rest schedule. Minister Chu appears and disappears like a ghost. Normally, we do not know when he is around and when he is not around. Chu Yang said honestly. This was the truth. That's right. In Wu Fa thought. Without a sense of security, only an idiot would show up every day. What is King of Hell Chu's cultivation level? I don't know. Chu Yang thought for a moment and said. But from the colding energy that Minister Chu's body often exudes, it seems that Minister Chu knows martial arts. Moreover, his martial power is not low. He should be a high-level martial artist. Speaking till here, Chu Yang's face suddenly filled with anger. So many people are saying that Minister Chu doesn't know any martial arts, and is just a weak scholar. Senior, you don't know, but every time I hear such words, I want to slap the face of the person who said them. I also want to slap their faces a few times. In Wu Fa thought to himself. A weak scholar without martial arts can control Butian Pavilion to fight against Diwu Qingro? Even if his martial arts are low, he cannot do it. Motherfucker, did you read too many novels? Do you think he is Diwu Qingro? Diwu Qingro was the only one in the entire continent in the last 10,000 years. But one thing is for sure, Minister Chu rarely stays in Butian Pavilion. Chu Yang continued to tell his big lie. At the same time, he ordered the sword spirit to control his own heartbeat and pulse. He could not let this terrifying person in front of him see any clues. It had to be said that the sword soul did this to make the best use of everyone's talents. At the same time, the sword soul had to think of a way to recover his martial power. Although his martial power would not be of much use in front of such an expert, as long as he recovered his martial power, he would have the confidence to escape. Then where is he usually? In Wu Fa frowned. This increased the difficulty. He did not expect this King of Hell Chu to be so mysterious. Apart from a few trusted aides, very few people know where Minister Chu usually goes. Chu Yang seemed to be racking his brain to think. What else do you know? Tell me everything. In Wu Fa seemed to feel that he had already squeezed the value out of this little guy. His eyes unconsciously emitted a murderous aura. Let me recall that Hallmaster Chang once mentioned something about an inn. Chu Yang tried his best to think. I beg you, please don't kill me. I can definitely think of something. Quickly think. In Wu Fa was elated. This King of Hell Chu really knows how to find a place. An inn is a place where the good and the bad mix together. People come and go without end. If King of Hell Chu moves frequently, he is a great hermit hiding in the city. Not bad. Brilliant. Let me think. It seems to be some kind of door. Chu Yang frowned. Beads of sweat dripped down his forehead. The sword soul was already trying to break through the last barrier. Once this barrier was broken through, Chu Yang would be able to recover his martial power. What kind of door is it? In Wu Fa asked angrily. What kind of door is it? Chu Yang sucked in a breath of cold air. He seemed to be thinking very hard. Under the sword soul's efforts, the king-level master's energy seal was broken through. I remember now. Chu Yang shouted. He was very happy. What kind of door? Quickly say it. In Wu Fa was so happy that he could not help but move forward. The door in your mother's pants. Chu Yang roared and jumped up. His left hand was full of energy, and his right index finger was the tip of the tribulation sword. This was absolutely unexpected. Yin Wu Fa would never have thought that this tongue, who was so cooperative with his questions and answers, would suddenly recover his strength at this critical moment. Everything was under his control, and even if he grew wings, he would not be able to escape. But all of a sudden, something unexpected happened. How could a little martial artist like him break through a king-level master's energy seal? How could it be so strange? But Yin Wu Fa did not have time to think about these questions. Because Chu Yang's attack was very close. It only took a slight movement for it to reach him. Yin Wu Fa only felt a huge force coming at him. It was actually a strong wind. At the same time, he felt an extreme sense of danger from Chu Yang's right hand. His opponent was clearly bare-handed. With this kind of martial power, even if he stood still and let him hit him, he would not be injured. Why did he feel such an extreme sense of danger? Although he could not figure it out, Yin Wu Fa instinctively leaned his body to the side. His waist formed an iron bridge in an instant. The back of his head was almost touching the ground. Chu Yang's attack was too fast. The distance between the two was also very fast. Plus Yin Wu Fa was caught off guard. It was impossible to completely dodge. Therefore Yin Wu Fa chose to meet the attack head-on. But this time he deliberately moved away from Chu Yang's right hand. He was afraid that there was a strange weapon there that could harm him. This was an assassin's intuition. Yin Wu Fa always trusted his intuition. This intuition saved his life at this critical moment. Bang! Chu Yang's left hand did not hold back and hit Yin Wu Fa's dantian. The tip of the tribulation sword in his right hand also slashed across Yin Wu Fa's chest. Blood spurted out. Chu Yang's left hand struck down. He only felt a huge force coming from Yin Wu Fa's dantian. His 2 feet kicked off the ground. Borrowing the force of the counterattack, his whole body floated up. In a flash he was on top of the wall. His 2 feet kicked off the wall and his body shot out like an arrow. Chu Yang did not expect this sneak attack to kill a king-level master. He only wanted to delay him for a moment. His feet used all of his strength to stomp on the wall. The tiles on the wall flew up, bringing with them a cloud of dust. The black tiles flew toward Yin Wu Fa. At this moment, Chu Yang's body had already jumped off the wall and was running for his life. Yin Wu Fa roared. His body suddenly straightened. Just as he was about to jump up, he felt a pain in his dantian. He quickly took a step back. Although he was furious, he could only take a step back. Chu Yang's left hand had hit Yin Wu Fa's dantian. With Yin Wu Fa's martial power, there should not have been any damage. But this palm with all his strength had blocked the flow of internal energy in his dantian. It was just a momentary gap. Just a momentary gap. And Chu Yang had only asked for a momentary gap. That was why he did not hit his chest or his head. He knew it was useless. The difference between the two sides was too great. There was a difference of 40 to 50 levels. Only the dantian could have such an effect. After taking a step back, his dantian immediately returned to normal. Yin Wu Fa looked up to the sky and roared. In his fury, he no longer cared about hiding his body. He directly soared into the sky like a black cloud and flew away. I have to catch up to this little bastard. Bastard! The tiles and dust hit his body. Yin Wu Fa closed his eyes and ignored them. He rushed through them. The tiles hit his body and bounced off. Yin Wu Fa was so angry that he went crazy. This little ant dared to injure my king-level body. If this can be tolerated, what cannot be tolerated? Feeling the pain in his chest, blood continued to flow out. But with the circulation of his internal energy, it gradually slowed down. Yin Wu Fa's hatred and anger reached the heavens. At the same time, he was scared. His opponent had almost killed him. The wound was very deep. He could almost feel the pain in his chest and ribs. It had cut through his muscles and injured his ribs. If he had not dodged fast enough, he would have been cut in half. If a king-level master of his generation died under the sneak attack of a martial artist, it would be a big joke. He almost went down in history. Since ancient times, such a thing had never happened. He, a king-level master, had almost become the initiator of the biggest joke in history. He was a participant, but he was also the one being ridiculed. Thinking of this, Yin Wu-Fa was so ashamed that he wanted to kill himself. At the same time he felt strange. His body, even if the strongest man in the army swung his saber, would only leave a white mark. What did this guy use to injure him? He obviously did not have a weapon in his hand. If I don't kill him, I Yin Wu-Fa am not a man. Yin Wu-Fa viciously swore. After flying for dozens of feet, he did not find the little bastard's shadow. Yin Wu-Fa's body turned, and he suddenly soared into the sky. People on the street came and went. When they suddenly saw someone flying, it caused a commotion. They could not help but look up. Yin Wu-Fa ignored the strange gazes of the people on the street. He allowed the blood to drip from his chest. He looked up and down. He saw Chu Yang's black-robed figure. He was sticking close to the bottom of every wall. It was as if he was running in a panic. When a person is in a difficult situation, they can use their full potential. In this short period of time, Chu Yang had actually run more than 1,000 feet. No wonder he did not see him. He was sticking close to the wall. "Bastard, give me your life!" Yin Wu-Fa roared. His body was like a giant eagle diving for its prey. He shot down from the sky like lightning. Chu Yang did not look back. He did not make a sound and continued to run. Chapter 139. Yin Wu-Fa's method was very damaging to his body, and it also shook his internal organs. This was a taboo, but how could Yin Wu-Fa care about the taboo right now? What's shaking? I don't care. Kill, kill, kill. No one has ever dared to humiliate me like this. This little brat must be killed. As long as I kill this little brat, I will shake him 100 times. Yin Wu-Fa's hatred had reached an unimaginable level. Not only was there hatred, but there was also shame and lingering fear. Faintly, there was also a trace of greed. This little hand must have a divine weapon that far surpassed the divine weapons of the secular world. Otherwise, how could he have hurt me? As long as I kill him, that divine weapon will be mine. With my martial power and that divine weapon, I will be like a tiger that has grown wings. Taking a deep breath, Yin Wu-Fa's body once again soared into the sky. He chose a direction and chased in a straight line. He only regretted one thing. Why didn't he have any hidden weapons? However, even if I have hidden weapons, I can't let this abominable fellow die so easily. I want him to suffer the cruelest torture in the world before he dies. I want him to beg for death. Only then will the hatred in my heart be appeased. Yin Wu-Fa was chasing without regard for anything, but Chu Yang was also desperately running for his life. Chu Yang was madly running, specifically choosing a tricky path. He constantly changed directions even if the meridians in his body were messed up. He did not care. Close. Cloud Gate Inn. As long as I can reach this place, I will only need to reach the Cloud Gate Inn. Then my painstaking preparations will be effective. Chu Yang felt his heart beating so fast that it almost jumped out of his throat. His eyes had already turned blood red. Under such a terrifying pursuit, Chu Yang's speed and stamina were pushed to the limit in an instant. Then he maintained this speed and ran for his life. The one chasing him was a king-level master. While running for his life, Chu Yang only had one thought in his mind. I want to become strong, I want to become strong, I want to become strong, I want to become strong. I don't want to be chased and killed. I want to chase and kill others. I want to become strong. No matter if it is a king-level master or an emperor-level master, no one can chase after me. Chu Yang's speed was astonishingly increased by another level under his strong will. Behind him in the sky there was a sudden sound. A huge pressure suddenly enveloped him. Chu Yang roared. His body suddenly turned, and he maintained his speed to the limit. He suddenly drew a curve and ran straight ahead. With a loud bang, a big hole was left in the ground behind him. The soil that was stirred up almost fell on Chu Yang's body. 10 feet in front of him was the Cloud Gate Inn. Chu Yang rushed forward and quickly took out a black mask and put it on his head. Yin Wu-Fa took another step forward. He was now only 15 meters away from Chu Yang. At this distance, with Yin Wu-Fa's martial power, he could injure someone from a distance. Yin Wu-Fa took a deep breath. His skinny face actually emitted a faint purple-gold luster. His right palm pulled back and then suddenly shot out. A sharp whistling sound was emitted from his palm. Wherever the palm wind touched, faint white smoke appeared. He had used all his strength in this palm strike. Chu Yang only felt that the entire space seemed to have frozen under this attack. He was less than 50 feet away from the Cloud Gate Inn, but this distance was like a heavenly moat. His meridians were already empty, without a shred of strength. At this critical moment, the tribulation sword vibrated. The seven shades cold energy that it had absorbed at Beyond the Heavens sect suddenly rushed into Chu Yang's meridians without reservation. Chu Yang roared. He turned his hand and shot out a palm strike. His body suddenly leaned to the side, and he suddenly jumped into the air. As long as I can block it and use the momentum, I will be pushed over. As long as I don't die, everything will be fine. I hope that those bastards are at the inn right now. He thought of Chun Yutong's information. The masked men in black were at the inn. That was why Chu Yang decided to come today. Chun Yutong. Oh Chun Yutong, your information can't be false at such a critical moment. If you drop the chain again today, I will be done for. Chu Yang was praying at the same time. With a bang, two powerful forces collided in the air. Chu Yang let out a loud shout. He only felt a violent and ferocious primordial energy shatter his cold energy into pieces and scatter in the air. His back felt as if it had been hit by a heavy hammer. His vision blurred, and he felt a sweet taste in his throat. Then his body was hit and he fell down like a cloud. With a plop, he fell into the Cloud Gate Inn. With such a big commotion on the street, the people of the Hayamo clan in the Cloud Gate Inn naturally noticed. Two revered martial artists stepped out of the door to check. Chu Yang's body suddenly came crashing over. Caught off guard, Chu Yang was dressed in black with his face covered. The two of them instinctively thought that he was one of them. They both reached out to catch him. Poof! The three of them fell to the ground at the same time. The two revered martial artists turned pale with fright. With such a force, the two of them were actually knocked down? What's more, he was forced to come in by someone. Then what level of skill did the person who beat him have? After being caught by the two of them, most of the force on Chu Yang's back was transferred to the two of them. Before he could get up from the ground, he screamed at the top of his lungs, "King-level master, run! A strong enemy is attacking!" After he finished screaming, he spat out a mouthful of blood from his throat. His body was on the verge of collapse. When he shouted, "King-level N," these two words were shouted in a very rough manner. In other people's ears it sounded like, "Hurry up and leave. A strong enemy is coming to attack." In the blink of an eye, Yin Wu Fei's figure flashed in the air like a demon god. With a sudden leap he arrived here. His eyes swept over the area and he was surprised to find the words, "Cloud Gate Inn." Suddenly he had a thought. King of Hell Chu is here. What door? Could it be that this little guy is not lying? He risked his life to come here to inform me? But you are too silly. You tipped me off, but you also lured me over to Omega and the sum of the two. Then he heard the words, "King-level master, run. A strong enemy is attacking." He could not help but feel happy. His previous gloominess was swept away. He majestically shouted, "Run? Where do you think you are going? Leave your lives behind." The two men in black jumped up as soon as they fell down. Seeing Chu Yang's shout and hearing Yin Wu Fei's arrogant voice, they were furious. Their hatred for a common enemy rose up in a split second. They stood up to block Yin Wu Fei and coldly asked, "Who are you?" "Why, because your mother." Yin Wu Fei was furious. "Get out of the way. Get out of the way." The two revered martial artists of the Hayamo clan had always been arrogant in the three heavens. When had they ever been scolded like this? Now that they were sure that this sinister man in black was an enemy, they all cursed and attacked at the same time. Yin Wu Fei's eyes brightened. "Revered martial artist? Yes, this is King of Hell Chu's hiding place. There are two revered martial artists protecting him." He laughed and began to fight with the two men. As the three men fought, the wind blew and cut their faces. The two revered martial artists were not weak, but compared to Yin Wu Fei, they were much weaker. Almost as soon as the battle started, they were at a disadvantage. They were completely suppressed by Yin Wu Fei. A king-level master? The two men were shocked. The enemy was so strong. No wonder their companion wanted the king-level master to run. They quickly shouted as they fought. Whoosh! 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 Two revered martial artists appeared at the same time. Seeing the three men fighting and their companion on the verge of death, they did not hesitate to attack. One man. More people. In Wu Fa laughed wildly. So what if you have more people? If I don't kill all of you today, I swear I am not a human. A bunch of shameful bastards daring to stop me. What a joke. The revered martial artists attacked with all their strength. One of them angrily asked, "Who are you?" They thought that only the Mo clan could mobilize such a king-level expert in such a short time. Their men had just ambushed Mo Chengyu, and the little princess of the Mo clan. This person would definitely come for revenge. In Wu Fa angrily snorted. I am the one who wants your lives. Kill. The two revered martial artists became angry and attacked even more fiercely. However, In Wu Fa was a first-grade king-level master, and they were only revered martial artists. Even if they went all out, they were not his match. In Wu Fa happily laughed and attacked again. With two bangs, the two revered martial artists were thrown away like embroidered balls. The sound of bones breaking was heard and blood spurted out from their mouths. They had almost lost their lives after one attack. At this moment, the other four people's eyes turned red and they attacked with all their might. They did not care about their own life or death. In Wu Fa disdainfully said, "You are just a grain of rice. Why are you still not calling out to you? All of you stop." A cold voice rang out. Immediately, a person appeared at the entrance of the inn. He had a thin figure and a thin face. His eyes were very spirited. Moreover, there was a sinister aura in his eyes, causing people to tremble in fear. His face seemed to be covered with frost. At this moment he was frowning. In between his eyebrows there were 3 clear wrinkles. This person looked like he was 30 years old, 10 years old, or even 50 years old. At this moment this person had his hands behind his back. His sinister eyes emitted a sharp light as they stared at In Wu Fa's body. They were like 2 poisonous snakes that had locked onto their target. In Wu Fa raised his head to look. His whole body shook. He suddenly remembered Chu Yang's words. Thin, sinister eyes full of frost, and 3 vertical wrinkles between his eyebrows. Moreover, this person was just standing there and he was filled with a sense of power. Naturally, he had the aura of 1,000 soldiers. This was the aura of a person in a high position. Only those who were in control of life and death would have this kind of aura. Only this kind of person with this kind of demeanor and bearing could rule Butian Pavilion and oppose Diwu Qingro, a matchless hero of the world. Only this kind of cruel and merciless person would go on a killing spree. In Wu Fa's eyes emitted a cruel light. This was his biggest goal in coming to Iron Cloud. King of Hell Chu, you have finally appeared. Wahahaha. I have finally found you. After working overtime, I finally managed to gather enough for today's draft. The remaining 2 automatically left at 10 o'clock in the evening to celebrate my birthday. For today, I worked overtime for 2 days and 2 nights to come up with this draft. I did not want to break my promise to everyone. Chapter 140. In Wu Fa's spirit was roused. He was about to complete his mission and kill a superior. The excitement of killing a superior person filled his entire brain. At this moment, In Wu Fa's fighting spirit soared. The heroic spirit of the past when he accepted a mission to travel thousands of miles to take the head of a general suddenly rose. The moment the black-clothed man appeared, In Wu Fa let out an excited roar and attacked with all his strength. His body, hands, and feet suddenly seemed to be covered in a layer of faint golden mist. In an instant he struck out over 300 palms. For miserable shrieks rang out continuously. The 4 revered martial artists were thrown into the air in 4 different directions. While they were still in the air, the sound of their bones breaking could be heard. The bodies of the 4 revered martial artists spat out blood all over the sky. 2 of them didn't even land on the ground before they lost their lives. Even the 2 lucky survivors were unconscious. They fell to the ground with blood flowing out of their 7 orifices. In Wu Fa laughed loudly. His 2 arms suddenly shook. With a pop sound, his sleeves vibrated with the sound of metal colliding. The dust that had stuck to his body during the fight fell off his clothes. His movements were arrogant and confident. Then he slowly covered his clothes. Under the control of his Yuan Qi, the wound on his chest was no longer bleeding. When In Wu Fa raised his head again, he had a cruel smile on his face. He looked at the Hayamo King level leader's face and said casually, "Now it is finally peaceful." When this king of Helchu appeared, Yin Wu Fa had already sensed that this legendary Butian Pavilion minister was the first strong opponent he had met in all these years. Therefore, he used a swift and decisive method to get rid of this revered martial artist as quickly as possible, all for the sake of this one-on-one battle. He was originally an assassin, but now that they were facing each other he could no longer hide. He could only face him head-on. For Yin Wu Fa, he had lost his biggest advantage and was at a disadvantage. But with such a good opportunity, how could he be satisfied if he did not try? Next time if he wanted to meet King of Helchu again, it would not be so easy. The opponent was also a master. If the two of them were to fight at a critical moment, he would be in a disadvantageous position. Therefore it was best to get rid of them first. The Hayamo King level master coldly looked at Yin Wu Fa. His heart was filled with killing intent, and it was about to explode. Of his subordinates, 4 were seriously injured and unconscious, and 2 died on the spot. This was an unprecedented loss since he had come to the lower 3 heavens. There was no need to ask about this person. To be able to have such a deep hatred for the Black Devil, and to have such a high level of martial power, there was no one else other than the Mo clan. Peace and quiet? The Hayamo King level expert didn't move. Instead he floated up 3 feet from the ground. Then he stood still. His entire body emitted a dense black fog. It was obvious that he had gathered all of his martial power. His voice became even colder as he asked, "Who are you?" "The person who wants your life." Yin Wu Fa clasped his hands behind his back, displaying the demeanor of a master. "The person who wants my life." The Black Devil King level expert muttered to himself. Then he suddenly laughed coldly. Yes, what kind of king are you? What rank? How dare you boast so shamelessly when you're injured? Yin Wu Fa laughed complacently and said, "First grade martial king. Even though I am injured, taking your life is as easy as flipping my hand." The Hayamo King level expert slowly nodded and said, "That's right. If you are not a 5th grade martial king, you would not be arrogant enough to think that you can take my life. If you are not a 5th grade martial king, you would not dare to come alone." His skinny hand slowly opened up, and the black fog became thicker and thicker. In the dense fog, his eyes became brighter and brighter. In the end, even the whites of his eyes seemed to have disappeared, turning into 2 bright black holes. This situation was extremely frightening. It was as if a demon god was riding a foul wind and wretched fog, flying through the air. His black robes fluttered in the air without any wind, making rustling noises. With a clang, a black longsword with fog rising from it had already appeared in his right hand. "First grade martial king, you think you can kill me?" The Hayamo King level expert sneered. "Your clan did not tell you that. I also broke through to 1st grade martial king a year ago." "1st grade martial king." Yin Wu Fa laughed sinisterly. "Today, you will not be able to escape death. You killed my subordinates. Today you will die without a doubt. I will not let you leave this place alive." The 2 king level experts attacked each other verbally, and at the same time they launched an attack of aura. In the air, the faint golden mist and the gray dark mist surged back and forth. Both of them had the same idea. As long as one of them showed a slight weakness in their aura, they would be able to attack like lightning and end the battle in the shortest time possible. In front of experts, the battle of aura was extremely important. The battle of aura was related to the feeling of energy after the battle. If one side had the upper hand, the feeling of energy would be stronger. This was an unbridgeable gap. After a while, the 2 sides were evenly matched. The black fog did not advance, and the light golden fog did not retreat. They were in a stalemate in the air. Above their heads, the black fog and the light golden fog each transformed into a clear crown. It was these 2 crowns that caused the experts who heard the commotion to stop in their tracks. Their faces were filled with fear as they looked in this direction. No wonder there was such a big commotion. It turned out that 2 king-level experts were fighting. With a buzzing sound, the black sword cut through the air, leaving a clear black crack in the air. In a situation where both sides were evenly matched, the balance was broken first. "Attack! Attack!" Yin Wu Fa laughed loudly. The fog around his palms became thicker. He did not evade and attacked with all his might. The hissing sound continued. The whole place seemed to have become silent. Only the sound of the air being cut could be heard. Two shadows flashed like lightning. The palms were like mountains, and the sword was like layers upon layers. Two king-level experts were fighting with their lives on the line. The two people's faces were solemn. Neither of them dared to underestimate the other. They were both thin and scary. They were both evenly matched. Yin Wufa was furious. His martial power was originally higher than this king of Hell Chu's, but after being hit by the sword, his martial power was reduced. Now, after a long battle, he could not gain the upper hand. Seeing more and more people coming to watch from afar, Yin Wufa became anxious. With a loud roar, he suddenly turned his palm into a claw and unleashed his own lawless 18 forms. The wind created by the claw was no less sharp than the wind created by the sword. Since the beginning of the battle, the Hayamo King-level expert did not say a word. His face was calm. He only flicked his wrist and swung his sword. The black sword was like a poisonous dragon in the black fog. Every sword was filled with murderous intent. Bang! Yin Wufa's black palm and the Hayamo King's sword collided. Both of their bodies shook. Immediately, a series of banging sounds were heard. The two of them were truly enraged. Yin Wufa wanted to kill this king of Hell Chu no matter what, and the Hayamo King-level expert wanted to kill this powerful enemy who had just killed two of his subordinates. Both of them had a reason to fight with their lives on the line. Although their hearts were as calm as ice, their eyes were filled with anger and murderous intent. They were ready to explode at any moment. Chu Yang had already crawled up. His internal injuries were very serious, but they weren't so serious that he couldn't move. He stood far away, and only exposed his eyes to watch the fight between these two king-level experts. He was very satisfied in his heart. What a master! This is truly a match for a chess match. These two people's martial arts are very sharp. It is really admirable. Looking at the battle between the two, Chu Yang's mind was intoxicated. Even in his previous life, he had never seen a battle between king-level experts like this. Every move, every kick, and every lift of his foot were all exquisite to the extreme. Chu Yang looked at the moves that were proving his thoughts. He found that many details that he did not understand before suddenly became clear at this moment. This palm strike, the left foot went forward and the right foot rotated. It looked like it was attacking from the left, but the rotation of the right foot was constantly changing. If you defend from the left, I will attack from the right. If you defend from the right, I will attack from the left. The changes were all in one's heart. As for the sword, it looked like it was stabbing forward, but as it pierced forward, the straight body of the sword seemed to turn in an arc. It came from an impossible direction, and the attack was absolutely unexpected. This required the coordination of body movements and footwork, as well as the use of primordial energy, the ever-changing energy of a king-level expert. None of these could be missing. Chu Yang's eyes lit up as he watched. He almost forgot that he was seriously injured. With a loud bang, the crowns on top of the two people's heads shook violently. Then the two black shadows were sent flying backward like two big birds. The two people did not have any tricks up their sleeves. Yin Wufa's claw fiercely hit the left shoulder of the Hayamo King-level expert, and the sword of the Hayamo King-level expert pierced into Yin Wufa's right arm. Blood spurted out and a large piece of flesh flew out. The two people were sent flying. The face of the Hayamo King-level expert suddenly turned red, and then suddenly turned white. He spat out a mouthful of blood in midair. Yin Wufa's face turned yellow and then turned pale. Fresh blood sprayed into the sky. Before the momentum of their retreat was over, the two of them suddenly rushed back and continued to fight in midair. They slowly fought from the ground to the sky. Both of them fought to the death without retreating. Their eyes were completely red. Both of them were injured. To be injured in such a direct battle, both of them felt that it was the greatest humiliation of their lives. Their hatred for each other became deeper and deeper. Without saying a word, they fought to the death. Their moves became more and more ruthless, and more sinister. Chapter 141. Sure enough, Chu Yang's prayer had a good effect. Following an earth-shaking and violent sound, the two people were once again sent flying by each other, their staffs disheveled. They pulled apart a distance of several hundred feet and stood on the roof, staring at each other like fighting cocks. They panted heavily and did not immediately attack. The dense fog around them began to surge rapidly. Obviously, the two wanted to decide the victor with one strike. After a while, "Ah! Ah!" two roars rang out at the same time. It was not clear who came first. Hearing these two roars, Chu Yang felt his entire body tremble. His spine felt numb, as if he had been electrocuted. At this moment Chu Yang felt like he was about to die. This is great. It has finally begun. My injuries this time were not in vain. In midair, the two jumped up at the same time like two black meteors. Behind each of them was a string of clear afterimages as they approached each other at high speed. On the tip of the Hayamo King level expert sword, there was a black sword light that almost condensed into a solid substance. This sword, with both hands holding the sword hilt, formed a straight line with the sword in the air. It was full of desperation and desperation. This sword, once the sword was out, there would be no turning back. Yin Wu Fei's eyes widened dramatically. His hands were in front of him and behind him like a tiger clawing at its prey. His body leaped up and his legs bent. Halfway through his flight, his legs suddenly straightened, and his speed increased by a notch. His eyes were full of fanaticism. This moment had finally arrived. "Stop! Both of you stop right now!" A loud roar was heard from afar. Several black silhouettes rushed over as if they were flying. One of the black silhouettes was the fastest. He was running at the forefront. Above this person's head, there was a majestic crown. Another king-level expert. At this moment he was shouting, wanting to stop the battle between the two. However, it was too late. Before the long roar stopped, the two had already collided. Bang! 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 Yin Wu Fei's tiger claw, which had used all of his strength, struck the Hayamo King-level expert's body more than a dozen times. The sound of bones cracking could be heard. Puff! Puff! The Hayamo King-level master also did not want to lose out. His black sword flashed like an angry dragon, and in the blink of an eye, it crazily went into every part of Yin Wu Fei's body, and pulled it out 7 or 8 times. Every time he entered and exited, blood would gush out. When the two of them passed by each other, they both saw blood gushing out from the other's 7 orifices. At this moment both of them felt a trace of comfort in their hearts, but also a bit of regret. "I have finally killed King of Hell Chu." A smile appeared on Yin Wu Fei's thin face. "I've finally killed this Mo clan's low-grade king-level expert." The sinister eyes of the Hayamo king-level master flashed a trace of a smile. Then, the two of them passed each other and continued to fly forward. In the end, Yin Wu Fei's martial power was a little higher. At the last moment, he held his last breath and turned into a pale golden rainbow mixed with the color of blood. He took advantage of the momentum and continued to run madly toward his mother. One of the black-clothed men was a king-level expert. However, I was the only king-level expert of the Golden Horse Riders department. Therefore, that person must be an enemy. Even if I die, Yin Wu Fei's corpse will not fall into the enemy's hands. In this state of mind, Yin Wu Fei mustered up his last breath and disappeared without a trace. The black-clothed man was the Saber King of the Hayamo clan. Saber King. At this moment his heart was burning with anxiety. He used all his strength to catch the falling Sword King in his arms. When he landed on the ground he staggered a bit. He did not have time to chase after the enemy, so he first checked the Sword King's injuries. What he saw shocked him. Not a single rib of the Sword King's chest remained intact. His 5 viscera were all displaced. Many of his meridians were broken. His vital energy had dried up in his dantian. The black demon sword was still tightly gripped in his hand, but his arm was limp and drooping. It was broken into 7 or 8 lines. This was an injury that was almost certain to kill him. The Saber King did not dare to be careless. He immediately sent a steady stream of primordial energy into the Sword King's body. His heart relaxed a bit. If he can still hold primordial energy, then there is still hope. It's the Mo clan's people. The Sword King struggled for a moment. He tightly clenched his teeth and endured the pain in his body. He weakly said, "Third and old are done for. The other 4 are also seriously injured." This news greatly shocked the Saber King. They only sent one person? The Saber King cautiously asked. The Sword King closed his eyes. A trace of disappointment flashed across his face. Don't think about anything. First, control your injuries. Take care of your body first. The Saber King anxiously said, Don't worry. You will be fine. Hold on. Funkin. The Sword King weakly coughed and said, Before he came, he was injured. The Saber King calmed down. He held the Sword King's body and walked into the inn. Seeing the mess in the inn, the 4 men who were still lying unconscious on the ground, and the 2 corpses that had already stiffened, his eyes flashed with monstrous anger and hatred. You 2 go find a doctor. As long as there is a doctor in Ironcloud Citadel, have them come immediately. If anyone dares to disobey, kill them. You 3 immediately go and search. The Saber King tried his best to suppress his anger. Through gritted teeth he whispered, That person is seriously injured. He cannot have gone far. No matter what, we must find him and cut his body into 10,000 pieces. The 2 men in black behind him complied. 2 of them immediately flew out. The other 4 carefully carried the 4 men to their rooms. Then 3 of them quickly left as well. Only one was left to collect the dead bodies of his companions. The entire inn fell into a gloomy atmosphere. No one would have thought that 2 king-level masters and 12 revered martial artists would suffer such a great loss in Ironcloud Citadel. Think of a way to inform the clan. The Saber King's palm was still on the Sword King's back. He continuously poured energy into the Sword King and ordered, Look at the clan's will. Tell them to be quick. Investigate the ins and outs of this matter. What is going on? Why did the Mo clan suddenly find this place? Which of the 5 heavenly kings of the Mo clan is this person? Chu Zai had already left. Chu Yang didn't have time to do anything when he saw the Saber King appear in the distance like a soaring cloud. He pulled his body back and almost couldn't move his body. Then he turned around the corner and retreated. He had seen the final result of the battle clearly. These 2 king-level masters, even if they did not die, it would be difficult for them to recover in this lifetime. Chu Yang was very satisfied with this result. One was Diwu Qingrou's king-level master, and the other was the culprit who harmed Mo Qingwu. These 2 people in Chu Yang's mind deserved to die. Having personally directed and watched a great show for free, Minister Chu was in a very good mood. Even though his organs were aching and he was so tired that he almost fell asleep, his mind was in high spirits. So satisfying. A battle to the death between 2 king-level masters. Moreover, both sides were confused. The Mo people thought that Yin Wu Fa was a member of the Mo clan, and Yin Wu Fa thought that the opponent was king of Hell Chu from the beginning. This was a freak combination of factors. If the 2 sides knew that this was all just a misunderstanding, the 2 king-level masters would probably die from anger on the spot. The most satisfying thing was that all of this was a lucky hit. Chu Yang was very satisfied. He barely managed to adjust his breathing. Then he propped himself up and found a carriage to go to Butian Pavilion. These 2 revered martial artists of Golden Horse Riders Department were really skilled. In a short time they found a map of Butian Pavilion. Right now, the 2 were studying the buildings of Butian Pavilion. No matter what, they had to find the easiest way to sneak in so that the 2 of them could cooperate with the king-level masters to assassinate King of Hell Chu. A king-level master had not personally taken action for many years. The 2 of them thought of the king-level master's lightning-fast attacks and their blood boiled. In this Ironcloud nation, they were finally lucky enough to see a king-level master in action. While the 2 of them were concentrating on their research, the sound of something breaking through the air suddenly came from outside the window. In the next moment the window was shattered. An Yin Wu Fa's skinny body, dripping with blood, came crashing in. He fell to the ground and could not stand. He rolled a few times before he raised his head. His face was mournful like a ghost. The 2 of them looked and were shocked. Their souls flew out of their bodies. On the king-level master's body, there were countless wounds. On his stomach, thighs, right chest, and both shoulders there was a bloody hole. Blood was gushing out like it was free. Even his back was full of blood. It was actually a penetrating wound on both sides. Who was so vicious? Who was so fierce? Who could injure a king-level master to this extent? At this moment, the 2 of them were so shocked that their hearts almost stopped beating. Quickly, Leave this place immediately. Yin Wu Fa only managed to say one sentence before he spat out another mouthful of blood. His body twitched and he fell down. His voice was intermittent. King of Hell Chu is also a king-level master. He has also been seriously injured by me. Immediately inform the Prime Minister. The follow-up, speaking up to this point, he could not hold on any longer and fainted. The two of them hurriedly treated Yin Wu Fa's wounds. Even though they were revered martial artists, they were still frightened by such terrifying wounds. With such serious injuries, a king-level master was still able to come back alive. Wait, king-level master just said. King of Hell Chu is also a king-level master? Could it be that king-level master went out today and fought with King of Hell Chu? This was very difficult. The two of them treated Yin Wu Fa's wounds in the shortest amount of time. Then they left the place as fast as they could and contacted several iron horse riders to find another place to hide. After a while, another invisible falcon flew out from a corner of Iron Cloud Citadel and disappeared into the clear sky. Chapter 142. Even if Du Shiqing was an emperor-level master, facing the might of Iron Cloud and Golden Horse Riders Department, he could only die with a grievance. Moreover, he did not have such a high cultivation level. Senior Du, leaving early is your only chance of survival. Chu Yang said slowly. Even if I leave, this world is so big. Where can I go? Du Shiqing murmured. Senior Du, don't forget that I still owe you a favor. Chu Yang smiled. In this world, there are not many elders that I respect, and Senior Du is one of them. Du Shiqing shook his head and said, no. You are in a good position in Iron Cloud, and your future is limitless. Furthermore, this old man's life's work is in your hands. Even if this old man dies, I cannot implicate you. Du Shiqing's words were resolute and decisive. He had high hopes for Chu Yang. In this doctor's heart, nothing must happen to Chu Yang. You cannot drag me down. Chu Yang's heart was burning as he said casually, plus, in this world, only I can help Senior Du at that time. A doctor like Senior Du with such a temperament should not die. Chu Yang said gravely, Senior Du, this matter is settled. However, I have not investigated the other people to see if they are Di Wuqing Ro's men. If the situation is still unclear, then I can only take Senior Du with me. The other people he was talking about was Du Shiqing's bodyguard, Fire Saber Great Master Gao Wei Cheng. Chu Yang had no impression of this person. He also did not know if he was Du Shiqing's bodyguard or Di Wuqing Ro's spy. Chu Yang always felt that Gao Wei Cheng's ability to control people was somewhat strange. Du Shiqing sighed. He wanted to say something, but in the end he did not. After a long time he murmured, in this life one must not make a mistake. Once you make a mistake, sooner or later you will have to pay the debt. He suddenly smiled and said, I did not save your father, right? He paused and said, you do not owe me anything. Chu Yang smiled and said meaningfully, but I owe Mr. Du a conscience. The word conscience caused Du Shiqing to be silent for a long time. In a low voice he said, conscience, conscience. He did not say anything else. Du Shiqing stayed for a while before returning to the palace. Because of Tai Shicheng, Du Shiqing could not leave for too long. After Du Shiqing left, Chu Yang immediately sat up. Sword Spirit, are you there? Idiot. Give me a portion of the medicine from that day. I need to heal my injuries. Chu Yang said in a hurried manner. Chu Yang would need at least half a month to recuperate in order to slowly recover from his injuries. But now, at such a critical moment, how could he be willing to rest for half a month? Of course, he didn't forget that there was still a huge amount of medicinal power in his meridians. It would be a piece of cake to treat such an internal injury. Because the medicinal power was in his meridians, as long as it took effect, it would be equivalent to a natural recovery. If you release enough medicinal power to heal your injuries, then at the same time your injuries are healed, your cultivation will increase by 1 level. But you have just become a martial artist. Your state of mind is not stable and your comprehension is not deep. I'm afraid it will only be beneficial. The sword spirit hesitated. First grade martial artist. Don't forget, I broke through to first grade martial artist under the pressure of a king-level master. Chu Yang said, plus I just had a big fight with a king-level master. How could my state of mind be unstable? Chu Yang retorted. I'm afraid it has already surpassed it. The sword spirit was silent for a while, as if it was probing his state of mind. After a long time, Chu Yang felt a pure medicinal power spread through his meridians. An extremely comfortable feeling rose. At the same time, heat rose from his dantian. Unexpectedly, a cold energy rose from the tribulation sword and merged with the heat in his dantian. The cold and heat stimulated each other. Chu Yang only felt a thunderous sound in his dantian. Puff! Wu Qianqian came in with a bowl of water. Tai Butian followed behind her, wearing a brocade robe and a golden crown. They had just reached the door when they suddenly heard a strange sound coming from Chu Yang's body. The two of them had a strange look on their faces. They wanted to cover their noses but were embarrassed. This Minister Chu really had a personality. He actually used so much strength to release that kind of turbid energy. In an instant, the two of them felt that the room was filled with a strange energy. The two of them did not say a word and looked at Chu Yang strangely as if they were holding their breath. Chu Yang opened his eyes and saw the strange look on their faces. For some reason, he waved his hand and said, "First, what's wrong? You can move?" Wu Qianqian asked with difficulty. It was naturally difficult to say this sentence while holding their breath. Moreover, the sound was also very strange. Yes. What's wrong? Chu Yang looked at the two's red faces and asked in puzzlement. At this moment, heat rose from his dantian and cold energy rose from the tribulation sword. Puff! This time the sound was twice as loud as before, too shameless. Even if it wasn't intentional the previous time, it must be intentional this time. Because if it wasn't intentional, no one would release such a big sound. This was the result of brewing for a long time and then using all his strength. The effect of that. Wu Qianqian and Tai Butian looked at each other with anger in their hearts. Is this guy trying to disgust us on purpose? Drink it yourself. Holding her breath, Wu Qianqian placed the clear water at the head of the bed. Then she covered her nose and ran out. Tai Butian didn't say a word after she came in. At this moment, she glared at Chu Yang fiercely and followed Wu Qianqian out with a strange expression on her face. It was as if they were running away. This is not that. Chu Yang finally understood. It turned out that the two of them thought that he was releasing that kind of energy. I'm innocent. Chu Yang stared and thought, these two are really ignorant. Have you seen anyone release that kind of energy before? But since you're not here, it's convenient for me to heal. Tai Butian stood outside the door with her hands behind her back. Wu Qianqian stood behind her with a red face. After a while she said, I'm sorry, Your Highness. Maybe Chu Yang is injured and can't get rid of the impure energy in his body. Ugh. Tai Butian retched and waved her hand. Don't explain, I won't blame you. But your explanation is even more. Ugh, she was a smart girl, what was she talking about? Can't get rid of the impure energy in his body. Tai Butian was a little depressed. How could Wu Qianqian not know that the more she explained, the worse it would be? But she was really worried and confused. She didn't pay attention and said it just now. Just as the two of them were standing, they heard another loud sound coming from the room. Puff! Bright! The two of them covered their mouths and walked out a few steps at the same time. They stood under the roof and felt the fresh air blowing in. Only then did they feel better. They looked at each other and couldn't help but be overjoyed. Really energetic. Chang'ang hurried in from outside and was about to go to Chu Yang's room. Seeing that Tai Butian was here, he hurriedly bowed and asked in surprise, how's the minister's injury? Miss Wu, why are you outside? Tai Butian smiled and said, you'll know when you go in. Yes, yes. Chang'ang bowed and hurried in. Behind him, Wu Qianqian covered her mouth and her shoulders trembled. He heard Chang'ang's loud voice from inside, Minister, you touch. Fuck. Great Hall Master Cheng leaped up and retreated. He looked like an arrow that had been shot, and his movements were extremely agile. Haha. Tai Bu and Wu Qianqian laughed at the same time. Chang'ang covered his nose and looked a little embarrassed. He scratched his head and said, Minister Chu is really Minister Chu. Even that thing is so earth-shattering. Tai Butian coughed twice. He was a pure person. At this moment he already felt his throat itch. He said, since Minister Chu is fine, I'll go back first. Miss Wu, please take good care of Minister Chu. If it's inconvenient, Hall Master Chang can take care of him. As he spoke, He had already walked far away. Chang'ang made a vomiting face. He wanted to defend himself but did not dare to. That minister. That thing was so loud, take care of him? At this moment that strange sound was getting louder and louder. The intervals were getting shorter and shorter. Puff, puff, puff. Puff, 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 puff. Wu Qianqian finally could not bear it and said, Hall Master Chang, I'll have to trouble you. She covered her nose and ran away. Chang'ang was tongue-tied as he watched Wu Qianqian run away. He heard the puff-puff sound coming from the room. He suddenly felt disgusted and could not help but bend down. Poor Hall Master Chang vomited a puddle of water. Chu Yang also finally ended this extremely embarrassing, healing and upgrading session. Minister Chu, whose skin was as thick as a city wall, also felt that each day was like a year. His face turned red. This was the first time in his life that he blushed because of a misunderstanding. Because of this, Minister Chu had a big argument with the sword spirit in his consciousness. He absolutely did not believe that this kind of thing could not be controlled, but the sword spirit simply ignored him. After a long time, Chu Yang felt that his body was full of power. Wearing that hideous mask, he slowly walked out of the room. For the first time, he discovered that this mask actually had the function of covering up his shame. Cheng Yuang was sitting on a chair. His legs were weak and he stretched out his 2 long legs to sit on it. His face was haggard. Ahem. Minister Chu coughed dryly. Minister, you are much better. Chang'ang weakly tilted his head and looked at Chu Yang with lifeless eyes. What's the matter? Minister Chu's words were concise. The surveillance of those people has been completed. When do we start the operation? Chang'ang's spirits were finally lifted when he talked about the important matters. Not bad, were we discovered? Chu Yang nodded with satisfaction. Absolutely not. Chang'ang smiled and said, there are a few places that belong to the military. Many of the disabled soldiers live in those places. We easily exchanged places with some of them. The disabled soldiers were also very cooperative. Minister, they are all good men. Disabled soldiers. Chu Yang was lost in thought. In this country that has been on the battlefield for many years, how many disabled soldiers are there? These heroes who had once galloped on the battlefield had to drag their sick and disabled bodies to live in a simple and crude house. After thinking for a while, he said, when this matter is over, I will go with His Highness to visit these disabled soldiers. Chapter 143. Has our Butian Pavilion's messenger hawk been trained? Chu Yang asked. Messenger birds had always been a weakness. Ever since Chu Yang took over, he had begun to organize them. However, he could only get a few lightning falcons, he could not get any invisible falcons. This had always been a sore point for Chu Yang. Compared to the invisible falcons, the lightning falcons could not hide themselves and their flying speed was much slower. The first batch of lightning falcons can be used. Chungbai said. Try to reduce the contact between the people there and the headquarters. Don't do anything, just wait for my orders. When it is time to act, I will immediately notify you. Chu Yang said slowly. As he spoke, Chu Yang's eyes looked towards the south. He thought, did Diwu Qingro give up on rescuing Tang Xiansheng? That king-level master must have come at an uncertain time. First to assassinate and second to provide support. But when it came to rescuing them, it was still impossible. If Diwu Qingro knew that he had taken care of one of his king-level masters, what would he think? If Diwu Qingro wanted to rescue Tang Xiansheng, who would come? How many people would come? Pass down the order. Search the entire city for a seriously injured person. Chu Yang described Yin Wu Fei's face and said, tell the drawing masters to draw a picture and find this person. Even if he is dead, his body must be found. Yes. Chang'ang solemnly replied and turned to leave. Chu Yang sighed softly and looked towards the west. The red sun had already set, and the setting sun was like blood. It seemed to indicate that an even bigger bloody storm was coming. The people of the Heimo clan should have left after this, right? Chu Yang packed up and returned to Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Wu Qianqian didn't believe that Shermu's injuries had healed before he left. She carefully examined his injuries before she allowed him to leave. However, her charming eyes were filled with astonishment. Such heavy injuries, but they healed in the blink of an eye. This speed is too fast. What kind of miraculous medicine did divine Dr. Du give Chu Yang? When Chu Yang returned to Heavenly Armament Pavilion, little Luo was already anxiously waiting for him. Now Emo Qingwu felt more and more that Uncle Emo Chengyu was too boring. Brother Chu Yang was the best. Not only did he play with her every time, but he also brought back good things every time he came back. Emo Chengyu's injuries were also much better. He did not look as haggard as before, and his face had some color. This proved that with the help of Chu Yang's medicine, Emo Chengyu's injuries were slowly getting better. However, Emo Chengyu's face was getting gloomier and gloomier by the day. He would often sigh to himself. Once he recovered from his injuries, he would bring Emo Qingwu back to the clan. What would the clan do to Emo Qingwu's 3-in meridian being crippled? How would he treat this young lady whom he had personally watched grow up? With the ruthlessness of the clan, Emo Chengyu could almost imagine what kind of treatment Emo Qingwu would receive when she returned home. Even though he had Chu Yang's dreaming of a gentle dance saber as a bargaining chip, however, the situation was still not optimistic. What Emo Chengyu was most afraid of was that the Emo clan would take away this saber. Even though he had promised Chu Yang that he would be able to do so, his heart was not the least bit confident. Would the clan allow such a peerless saber to remain in the hands of a useless young lady? Thinking about this, Emo Chengyu's heart was in turmoil. He could not stop sighing. Even though Chu Yang was extremely smart, he did not come from a great clan. People who did not come from a great clan would never understand how important the word clan was in the hearts of the younger members of a great clan. Also, where were the 2 young masters that came with him? Senior Emo Chu Yang carried Emo Qingwu and came in front of Emo Chengyu. Emo Qingwu was wearing a red dress. She was holding a tonghulu and eating it with relish. Brother Chu. Emo Weiyu forced a smile. Why are you so happy today? There are some things that will make you happy if I tell you. Chu Yang smiled. Let me tell you some good news. The Heiamo clan Sword King fought with an unknown king-level master. The Sword King was seriously injured. Almost all of his bones were broken. As for the Sword King's subordinates, 2 of them died and 4 of them were heavily injured. Who is that king-level master? How are his injuries? Emo Chengyu asked anxiously. When he heard this news, his first reaction was not joy or joy. Instead, he was worried about the injuries of that king-level master. Emo Chengyu guessed that this unknown king-level master could be a brother of his clan. His concern for his brother overshadowed his excitement when he heard that the enemy was injured. To achieve such a result, unless the enemy was 2 grades higher than the enemy, the only way was to use a mutual destruction tactic. Emo Chengyu thought about the other 3 king-level brothers that came with him. None of them were 2 grades higher than the Sword King. When he heard this news, how could he not be worried? Chu Yang secretly nodded. This Emo Chengyu was indeed a loyal person. When he heard this news, his first reaction was to worry about his companions. That king-level master took 7 or 8 strikes from the Sword King. Each strike went through his body. Even though he tried his best to avoid being hit in the heart, his chances of survival are very low. Chu Yang said slowly. Emo Chengyu fiercely punched the ground. With a painful expression he said, I don't know which brother it was. That king-level master is not from your Emo clan. Chu Yang smiled and said, he is from Great Zhao's Golden Horse Riders department. He came to assassinate me, but I replaced him with someone else. Really? Ha ha ha. Emo Chengyu's spirit was lifted. He could not help but smile. Suddenly he said, that's not right. Why would a king-level master want to assassinate you? Plus, how could a king-level master assassinate the wrong person? That's not right. Of course there is a reason. Chu Yang smiled mysteriously. How many days do you need to recover from your injuries? He changed the topic. Right now, the most important thing is that my meridians are blocked. If I want to open them one by one and recover my fighting strength, I am afraid it will take at least half a month. Emo Chengyu said listlessly. It's okay. You can slowly recover. There is no need to rush. Chu Yang comforted him. The 2 of them looked at each other and smiled at the same time. They were very clear about each other's thoughts. For every day that Emo Chengyu did not recover, Emo Qingwu would have to stay with Chu Yang. This was a result that Chu Yang could not ask for more. I have time today. I remember there are 2 saber moves that I can teach Xiao Wu. Chu Yang smiled and said, although these moves are not connected and are incomplete, their power is not small. They may not be as good as your clan's, but they are still my good intentions. Mo Chongyu's face became serious. He bowed deeply and said, thank you, Brother Chu. In this era, every martial artist treasured their own unique martial arts as much as their own lives. They were afraid that if they taught it to someone else and knew too much, the enemy would be able to figure out their flaws. Other than master and disciple, very few people would be able to show their martial arts to others. Although Mo Chongyu thought that Chu Yang's cultivation was low and he might not have any good moves, it was rare for him to have such good intentions. The saber move that Chu Yang wanted to teach Mo Qingwu was the first move of the tribulation sword technique. One cold light pierces 10,000 fathoms. This move, after being modified by Chu Yang, turned into a saber move that had two moves. One move was for defense and the other for offense. Although it was not as good as a sword move, using a saber move was much more difficult to master. If it was purely for defense, as long as the difference in power between the two sides was not too great, then Mo Qingwu's safety would be guaranteed. Chu Yang took Mo Qingwu to learn saber moves. Mo Chongyu was alone in the secret chamber, deep in thought. Chu Yang had already said that he would only teach this saber move to Mo Qingwu. His words were very clear. No one else should know about it. Therefore, even though Mo Chongyu was Mo Qingwu's guardian, he could not just watch from the side. Mo Chongyu was thinking. This Chu Yang was able to make Golden Horse Riders Department send a king-level master to assassinate him. It seems like his identity in Luyun country is very important. But what is his position? Is he a relative of the royal family? Even though he was saved by Chu Yang, he did not know Chu Yang's identity. Not long after, Mo Chongyu's heart began to ache. He always thought that Chu Yang's love for Mo Qingwu exceeded everything else. But today he was greatly surprised. Chu Yang's strictness towards Mo Qingwu was comparable to his love for her. Wrong. How do you hold the saber? The edge of the saber should be facing outwards. Again. Again. Idiot. Practice again. Practice 10 times. Why can't you remember? What's wrong with you? Why can't you hold such a light saber? Did you not eat? You are really stupid. Hurry up. Don't cry. Do it again. If you can't remember, I'll spank you. Pa. Pa. Woo woo woo, don't cry. Practice again. You are even stupider than a pig. Chu Yang's roars and the little Miss's cries of grievance were heard continuously. Mo Chongyu's heart was in pain, as if he was sitting on pins and needles. When had the little miss ever been scolded so harshly? Chu Yang had no choice but to do so. With Mo Chongyu's recovery, the date of his departure from Mo Qingwu was getting closer and closer. Once she returned, Mo Qingwu would have to face the harshness of the clan. Even if she had a saber, it could not replace her talent. The saber moves he taught Mo Qingwu could be used as a defensive trump card. It would be a surprise attack. If someone bullied her, or if the clan had a martial arts competition, she would be invincible. This was the only thing Chu Yang could do for Mo Qingwu. Time was of the essence. If she did not practice in the next few days, the little girl would not be able to handle the changes in the clan. How could she practice the saber? Therefore, Chu Yang had to be strict. Even if his heart ached, he had to keep a straight face and continue to urge her. Finally, it was over. Mo Chongyu could not wait to rush in. When he saw Mo Qingwu's tear-stained face, he could not help but feel distressed. He hugged her and asked, "Little miss, are you tired? Do you want me to beat him up?" "No." Mo Qingwu unexpectedly shook her head. Her eyes were still filled with tears, but she said firmly, "Brother Chu Yang is doing this for my own good." This sentence made Mo Chongyu surprised and happy. He could only say that the little miss had grown up. The night quickly passed, and in the blink of an eye, it was dawn. Chapter 144. When Diwu Qingro woke up, he was immediately notified. The first king-level leader of the Golden Horse Riders Department had been waiting in the study for more than 2 hours. Official Han, Official Chang, and Official Chang had also been waiting in the study for a long time. Diwu Qingro slightly frowned. He leisurely ate his breakfast and then went to the study. This was Diwu Qingro. He always believed that no matter how big the matter was, he could not lose his sense of propriety. Whatever he needed to do, he would do it. He had to leave time for careful consideration. No matter what, he could not make a hasty decision. If he was hasty, there would be mistakes. Diwu Qingro would not allow himself to make any mistakes. Seeing Diwu Qingro enter the study, the four people sitting inside stood up at the same time. Prime Minister. Sit down. Diwu Qingro smiled and nodded. He came to his seat and slowly sat down. Then he said, King-level leader Jing, what matter has caused you to lose your sense of propriety? After so many years, this is the first time. Sitting opposite him was an old man of about 10 years old. He looked very scholarly. His face was white, his hair was white, and his beard was white. His eyes were calm and wise. He was like a learned scholar. Just by looking at his face, no one would have thought that this kind-looking old man was the first king-level leader of the Golden Horse Riders Department, a king-level master, Jing Menghun. Jing Menghun smiled bitterly and said, the news came too suddenly. I was also caught off guard. I was worried and confused. Oh, worried and confused? Is it news from king-level leader Yin? Diwu Qingro slowly picked up the teacup in front of him and gently blew the tea leaves on the surface. He said softly, what happened to Yin Wufa? Han Buchu and the others had an admiring expression on their faces. Diwu Qingro did not know what had happened, but when he saw Yin Wufa, he immediately guessed that something had happened to Yin Wufa. This kind of keen intuition and deductive ability was rare. The news came. Yin Wufa was seriously injured. His life is at stake. Jing Menghun took a deep breath. His face was heavy as he said. He fought with King of Hell Chu on the street. Both sides were seriously injured. King of Hell Chu? He fought with king-level leader Yin and both sides were seriously injured? Diwu Qingro's complexion finally changed. He stopped blowing the tea powder and said thoughtfully, King of Hell Chu has such an ability? The other three people also exposed a doubtful look on their faces. Even Jing Menghun's face looked somewhat depressed. Even though King of Hell Chu was mysterious and unpredictable, no one would have thought that King of Hell Chu would have the ability to fight against Yin Wufa. Yin Wufa is a king-level master. This letter was written by Yin Wufa in one breath. Jing Menghun took out a piece of paper stained with blood. Just by looking at this piece of paper, one could imagine the severity of Yin Wufa's injuries. Diwu Qingro did not immediately take the paper. Instead he frowned. Yin Wufa is seriously injured. Why is he still writing? Could it be that the two revered martial artists who went with him had already died? Is there no one else beside him? No, it's just that the real King of Hell Chu is different from the one we have in our intelligence reports. Jing Menghun helplessly said. We've been deceived by King of Hell Chu. None of the information we have about him is true. All fake. Diwu Qingro finally nodded. Han Buchu took the paper and handed it to Diwu Qingro. Big brother above. From the first sentence, it was clear that this letter was written by Yin Wufa to Jing Menghun. Little brother is dying in Iron Cloud, but the enemy is cunning. It is hard to tell the truth. Diwu Qingro's complexion became serious after hearing this. Official Chu is extremely cunning. Everyone thinks Official Chu is young, but they do not know his true appearance. Yin Wufa's description was extremely detailed. It was a summary of everything Chu Yang had told him about the king-level masters of the Hamo clan. Now I know that rumors cannot be trusted. King of Hell Chu is actually a king-level master of the sword. Little brother fought with him at the Cloud Gate. Both sides were injured. Little brother was hit by his sword. Official Chu received 11 attacks from me. His bones should be broken, and his life should be in danger. This is the best time to get rid of future troubles. Official Chu should have more than 10 revered martial artists by his side. His strength is very strong. This does not match the information. Iron Cloud's intelligence network has almost collapsed. King of Hell Chu has already killed 70% of them. If he is not eliminated, he will become a big problem. Yin Wufa's letter made Diwu Qingro frown. Yin Wufa's information was as unbelievable as the Night of the Arabian Nights. The information in his hands should not be false. But this letter was information that Yin Wufa used his life to exchange for. What is going on? King of Hell Chu is a king-level master? And a king-level master at that. Isn't this too absurd? Too absurd. Diwu Qingro snorted and said, "Everyone tell me what you think." Jing Menghun coughed and said, "I also thought so at first. But the bloodletter is still fresh in my mind. This cannot be King of Helchu's plan. Plus, King of Helchu does not have the ability to capture third brother." As soon as he said this, everyone nodded in agreement. If he wanted to create such a letter with Inwu Fa's seal, he would have to capture Inwu Fa to do it. With Inwu Fa's king-level strength, even if he could not win, he could still escape. Plus, for a master of this level, even if there was no hope, he would still choose to die in battle. He would not be captured. It was easy for an emperor-level expert to kill a king-level expert. However, the possibility of capturing a king-level expert alive wasn't very high. "I think," Gao Shang coughed and said, "there are many things in this bloodletter that can be discussed. For example, we all know that King of Helchu is trying to mislead us. But there is one point that should be true. After Chu Yang left Beyond the Heavens sect, he joined Du Shiqing's group. Plus, he met Tai Butian in front of Ironcloud Citadel. After Tai Butian returned, she immediately sent people to look for him. We've investigated no less than 30 people before, and they all confirmed this point. Furthermore, the Fire Saber Grandmaster Gao Weicheng also confirmed this point. After Chu Yang entered Ironcloud Citadel, Tai Butian sent Wu Qianqian from Beyond the Heavens sect to invite him. Since then, Chu Yang has disappeared from Ironcloud Citadel. However, Butian Pavilion had an additional minister Chu. From this point of view, King of Helchu is Chu Yang. This point should be confirmed without a doubt. Hearing this, Jing Menghun's face sank. Could it be that the news my brother sent back after risking his life is false? But Gao Shang changed the topic and said, "But the news that King-level Master Yin sent back is also not false. This is news that King-level Master risked his life to send back. There is no doubt about it. Therefore, I boldly speculate that Butian Pavilion might have 2 ministers?" Gao Shang said thoughtfully, "And Chu Yang, could it be that Tai Butian is trying to mislead us? And the real King of Helchu is surnamed Chu. You mean, at that time Tai Butian already had a master, and Chu Yang's appearance gave Tai Butian the opportunity to mislead us?" Chang Yunhe frowned and asked. "It's not necessarily a deliberate deception. I'm afraid that this Chu Yang has some kind of ability. Perhaps it's intelligence, or perhaps it's scheming, or perhaps it's his identity. In short, he can give Tai Butian's other minister 3 things that he doesn't possess." Gao Shang slowly said, "Only such an explanation can completely explain the contradiction. Tai Butian's place should not be so strict, right?" Han Buchu sneered. "If there really are 2 ministers, then there is no reason why we would not have gotten the news." "I also think so." Chang Yunhe nodded and said, "Right now, Butian Pavilion only has 1 minister, and this minister is not Chu Yang. This point should be true." The 3 of them each had their own opinions and argued endlessly. Diwu Qingro and Jing Menghun listened quietly. Jing Menghun felt as if his brain had turned into a paste due to these people's arguments. It could not be dissected. Diwu Qingro also frowned. His previous idea of King of Helchu's misdirection was faintly shaken. After all, Inwu Fa was injured in a direct confrontation. This matter should not be false. Why did this happen? For the first time, Diwu Qingro felt that his mind was in a mess. Listening to his 3 capable subordinates quarreling in front of him, his heart was constantly thinking, trying to sort out this tangled mess of thoughts. "Prime Minister, no matter what this King of Helchu is, third brother is in urgent need of help. Someone must immediately go and save third brother. He is so seriously injured. If the medicine is not enough, I am afraid," Jing Menghun said thoughtfully. Jing Menghun's words made Diwu Qingro's eyes brighten. He said, "That's right. Hearing is not true, seeing is believing." Hearing is not true. Seeing is believing? Gao Shang and the other 2 could not make heads or tails of this matter. "You 3, have you come up with a plan?" Diwu Qingro's expression became calm again. "Yes." Gao Shang took out the prepared plan and handed it over to Diwu Qingro. Let's follow the second plan." Diwu Qingro looked at the plan and quickly made a decision. He said, "These people must be very careful. First, we must save number 1. Second, we must save King-level Master Yin. We must let Yin Wu Fa safely return to Great Zhao. Third, we must confirm news of King of Hell Chu. The first and second plans are not difficult. The difficult part is the third plan. Diwu Qingro said. Regardless of whether the injured king-level master is King of Hell Chu or not, he is still seriously injured. There are no more masters in Iron Cloud. As long as we are careful, it is not difficult to do these things. Chapter 145. Among the carriages, Cheng Yuan he was sitting in the carriage. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly felt something in his heart. He poked his head out of the carriage and looked at the north gate slowly becoming smaller. He thought about his home here. His parents, wife and children were all here. His ancestors were all from Great Zhao, and he had been living in this city for 40 years. He could not help but think of a saying, born here, raised here, died here. Suddenly, he smiled bitterly and thought, born here does not mean you can grow up here. Even if you are born here does not mean you can die here. This saying was a bit wishful thinking. Just like himself does not mean he will die in Great Zhao. A real man would die in battle. Why should he care where he dies? He could not help but recite, 8,000 miles away from the yellow sands, I have carried this body for 40 years. The wind blows, the autumn chill, the white hair, the clouds cover the sky, and the heart is cold. After reciting it, he felt that there was nothing new about it. It was just a cliché. He smiled bitterly and thought, why is the last line, the heart is cold? I was born in the Prime Minister's temple. This time I am going out to accomplish something. He shook his head and sat back in the carriage. He did not record this poem. When Cheng Yuan he left, it was late autumn. The wind was bleak and the sky was crying. Dark clouds covered the sky, threatening to destroy the city. At this moment in Iron Cloud Citadel, Chu Yang had just finished his 3 challenges and returned to Butian Pavilion. He was holding a book and reading hard. Wu Qianqian looked at the tall stack of books on Chu Yang's desk with a puzzled expression. She could not help but frown. She did not understand. It wasn't known when the minister had started to study diligently. He had started to study hard. He was so focused that he didn't earn a single penny. He was so diligent that he even forgot to eat and sleep. It was enough to shame the most hard-working scholars. Immortal Wu Qianqian wouldn't have been so surprised if Minister Chu had read a book about the art of war, or even the general history of the continent or something like that. But this guy was actually reading books that were considered by scholars to be mediocre. Stories of talented women, legends of famous people, absurd stories of strange gods and monsters. These stories weren't long. They were made up by some bored people when they were extremely bored in order to amuse people. There wasn't much meaning in them. If they were used to amuse children, it would be a good use. But Chu Yang thought. However, it was truly a little embarrassing, especially when Minister Chu was looking at it. He had a concentrated look on his face, and was mumbling something at the same time. If one listened closely, they would find that he was reciting something. This made Wu Qianqian even more speechless, however. The most excessive thing was that Minister Chu seemed to be addicted to watching. He would giggle foolishly from time to time. Think about it, a person of high status, dressed in black from head to toe, wearing a ferocious mask on his face, holding a children's book and laughing foolishly. Just thinking about it gave people goosebumps, not to mention seeing it with their own eyes. Wu Qianqian felt goosebumps all over her body. Minister Chu was still giggling foolishly. The most excessive thing was that his mind would wander while reading the book. His eyes would become dull, and then a shiny line of saliva would hang down from the mouth of his mask. At that time, even his eyes would become somewhat lustful. To be able to look lustful while reading a children's book. What a high level of mental state. Wu Qianqian groaned, I can't live through this day. While she was dealing with the matter, a bone-chilling laughter came from behind her. If Wu Qianqian was not a girl and had good self-restraint, she would have already stood up and slapped the book on King of Hell Chu's face. Then she would have poured a cup of tea on him, pointed at the door and shouted, Get lost. As for the origin of these books, Wu Qianqian was even more speechless. King of Hell Chu had used his position and power for personal gain. He had ordered those ferocious fellows to look everywhere for these books, sending a group of assassins to look for children's books. This was something that Minister Chu was very familiar with. Everyone had to bring 20 books. If they couldn't bring it, they would be punished by military law. Wu Qianqian had the urge to laugh so hard that she almost choked on her laughter every time she thought of those fierce-looking fellows carrying children's books in their arms with a bitter smile on their faces. This impulse reached its peak when hall leader Chang came in with a mule of books. An old man with a face full of wrinkles was awkwardly holding a mule of children's books. Wu Qianqian laughed crazily. Once, when Minister Chu was reading a book, Bu Tiantai came to visit. After entering the door, the calm and graceful Bu Tiantai couldn't help but open his mouth wide and couldn't close it. Then he said something that made Wu Qianqian laugh until her stomach hurt every time she thought of it. And Minister Chu is developing his intelligence? As the head of an intelligence network and assassin leader, and the head of an espionage organization, doing such a thing really made people not know whether to laugh or cry. The most outrageous thing was that every morning he came, he would say, "I forgot that story." This sentence made Wu Qianqian speechless. What kind of person is this? Chu Yang did not want the children's books anymore. Wu Qianqian had already thrown away a few boxes. The most outrageous thing was that not only did he like children's books, he also liked children's toys. He liked children's toys not for boys but for girls' toys. When he sees a cute one, he will hug it for a while and daydream for a while. His eyes will be filled with lust. You even have to put it back when you leave at night. Wu Qianqian's heart was jumping every day. Because every time Minister Chu finished his work, he would leave behind a sentence, "If you have nothing to do, go out and buy me a toy." Every time she heard this sentence, Wu Qianqian would kick her feet. The only thing that made Wu Qianqian somewhat proud was, "Have you seen King of Hell Chu looking at a book and smiling foolishly? I have seen it. Have you seen King of Hell Chu hugging a toy that is meant for little girls and looking like he is in heat? I have seen it. Mother asterisk." Although Wu Qianqian did not say this sentence out loud, in her heart, for the first time in her life, she had indeed opened her abstinence. "Minister, someone wants to see you." Cheng Eng's voice could be heard. Hall Master Cheng's voice sounded abnormal, as if he had a toothache. Yes. Everyone who knew that Minister Chu wanted these things for their own use had the same expression on their faces. "Who is it?" "I don't have time." Minister Chu, who was studying diligently, said impatiently, Yes. It's the person who came the other day." Cheng Eng's face looked like an old man with a bitter gourd in his mouth. The refusal was very straightforward, but this person really could not be refused. This person was from the Hayamo sect, and a king-level master. "The person who came the other day?" Chu Yang asked suspiciously. A cold voice replied, "Minister Chu, you're really arrogant, ah." The voice was cold. Before the voice had faded, a man in black appeared at the door. His movements were as fast as a ghost. Chu Yang looked up. He was pleasantly surprised. "Ah, I was wondering who it was, so it was you. Please sit down, please sit down. I was wondering why the magpies have been singing since morning. It turns out that you have graced us with your presence. Qian, bring tea, bring good tea. Bring my collection of good tea." These words were full of affection. The Hayamo Saber King almost thought that he had come to the home of a relative he had not seen for many years. As he spoke, Minister Chu affectionately left his seat and came forward to greet him. The Hayamo Saber King snorted. He was about to speak when he saw the children's book in King of Hell Chu's hand. The unlucky time was in a mess. This leader of Butian Pavilion was actually reading a book called Lily Dog and Dang Cow. Looking at the table, this kind of book was actually scattered all over the place. The Legend of the Sacred Fish, the story of the Emperor and the Singer, the love story of the three-tailed toad and the two-legged horse, the story of the 7 Snow Whites and the dwarf, Misty Giggle. The title of the book is purely du jia. The Saber King was in a mess. In an instant, his eyes stared blankly. He raised his hands and saw a layer of goosebumps on the back of his hands. On the side, Wu Qianqian lowered her head in shame and turned her face away. "This is so embarrassing." Ahem. Minister Chu was also a little embarrassed. He rubbed his nose through the mask and shouted, "Qian, why are you still not taking away your books? What will the guests think if they see them?" Then he calmly said to the Hayamo Saber King, Sorry, ahem, little girls are all like this, ahem. Wu Qianqian was so angry that her pretty face turned green. "When did it become my reading? If you want to keep your face, don't push the blame onto me." But under King of Hell Chu's glare, Miss Wu did not dare to say anything. She swallowed her anger and began to pack her books. The Hayamo Saber King sat down with a crooked mouth and slanted eyes. In his heart he scolded this guy for being shameless. These books are obviously with you, and you even have an open book in your hand. How dare you frame a girl? But he laughed and said, no harm, no harm. All little girls like this. After saying this, even the Saber King felt his face turn red. Little girls like this, but that is a 7 or 8-year-old girl. This little girl in front of me is 17 or 18 years old. But today I have a request, so I can only say it. Wu Qianqian threw all the books into the box. She pouted and walked in front of Minister Chu. She pouted and said, Minister Chu, give me back the book in your hand. It is my book. It should be enough for me to fan myself, right? Ahem, yes. He quickly threw it into Wu Qianqian's suitcase. He laughed and said, the weather is really hot. This thing is holding a fan. She's fanning herself. Hey, she's really crafty. Oh. Chapter 146. Wu Qianqian pouted and left with the box. Only the two of them were left in the room. Chuyu politely gave up his seat and personally poured a cup of hot tea for Chuyu. He warmly said, Senior seems to have a lot of free time today. You actually came to visit me. Haha, I am flattered. The wind rises in the autumn. The clouds cover the top of my head. Seeing that it is snowing, can I have a cup of tea? In his embarrassment, Minister Chu suddenly had the urge to compose a poem. He acted like a refined scholar. Seeing the Saber King staring at him with wide eyes, Minister Chu coughed twice and said, the meaning of my poem is, if Senior is free, would you like to have a drink here? I understand. The Saber King almost collapsed and angrily said, does he think I am blind? This guy's shamelessness is not ordinary. Just a moment ago he was lamenting about how hot the weather was, and now he is saying that it is snowing. What's more, could it even be called a poem? What kind of nonsense is this? Ever since he entered this place, he had only been shocked for a moment, then looked down on him, and now he was on the verge of collapsing. The Saber King picked up his teacup and took a big gulp. He was so distracted by this guy that he forgot his purpose for coming here. Senior, look, this tea is good tea. It is picked from the peak of Black Mountain. After the tea leaves were drunk, the tea leaves were dried by the tongue of a 16-year-old girl. From start to finish it is untainted. It is called Black Mountain tea for young girls. Minister Chu shook his head and said in high spirits, the most wonderful thing is that this tea isn't mine. Not yours. The Saber King just remembered the purpose of his visit and was confused again. Yes, it is. King of Hell Chu proudly leaned over and whispered, the last time I went to His Highness' study, I smelled the aroma of tea. As I was leaving I saw a box of tea on the bookshelf. Minister Chu's eyes sneakily looked left and right. Then he stretched out his hand and made a sneaky gesture. His eyebrows fluttered and his eyes danced inside the mask. So I conveniently led this sheep? The Black Devil King was dumbfounded as he looked at King of Hell Chu. 3 black lines appeared on his forehead. That's why this tea is so hard to come by. It's only because you're here, Senior. If it were anyone else, I wouldn't have taken it out. Minister Chu said in a cordial manner, try it. Don't you feel the wonder of the mountains and rivers, the elegance of the earth, the faintness of the clouds and mist, and the fragrance of the heaven and earth? Of course, there is also the pure and natural flavor of a young girl. It even has a little bit of that cacique milk fragrance. Thank you for your kindness. Lord Throne looked at the ferocious mask and listened to the creepy laughter. He suddenly felt that he was stuttering and his butt was on pins and needles. Even when facing the patriarch, this old man has never been this nervous. The guy in front of him was clearly a perverted thief who ate both men and women, young and old. The Saber King suddenly realized that talking to Minister Chu was simply a form of torture. He couldn't help but wonder if he had come to the wrong place today. Senior, please drink some tea, Minister Chu politely said. The Saber King was speechless. Senior, please have another cup, Minister Chu said again. The Saber King drank another cup. Please, don't do it more than 3 times. You must drink another cup. The Saber King glared and drank. For great. The Saber King frowned and drank another cup. 5525 please. The Saber King's veins bulged. Great, I just drank great. The Saber King finally couldn't take it anymore. Minister Chu, I came here today because I have a request. No need to say it. No matter what Senior says, I will do my best to help. Chu Yang laughed heartily. His laughter was hearty and friendly. Who are we? The Saber King had the urge to stand up and run away. Can you not say it so intimately? What relationship do I have with you? The Saber King took a deep breath. He tried his best to calm himself down. Then he slowly exhaled and said, 2 days ago, there was a battle between king-level masters in the city. This kind of big event naturally couldn't be hidden from Minister Chu, right? When it came to business, Chu Yang also became serious and said, of course I heard about this kind of big event. Senior's companion seems to have been injured quite badly. I have even sent people to deliver medicine to them as a token of my meager strength. Thank you, Minister Chu. The Saber King said, my brother's life is no longer in danger. However, the enemy is still at large. In Ironcloud Citadel with our strength, finding one person is like finding a needle in a haystack. However, if Minister Chu helps, it will be very different. Chu Yang frowned slightly and did not say anything for a long time. When the Saber King came, Chu Yang knew why he came, but he felt that it was too much of a loss to help. Plus, the Heimo Saber Sword Two Kings were the main culprits of Qing Wu's misfortune. How could Chu Yang be willing to help them now? But for the sake of his plan and the current situation, he had to do this. Minister Chu was depressed, so he naturally could not let the Saber King feel good. Thus, from the moment the Saber King came in, Chu Yang had been rambling on and on while maintaining a sense of propriety. Of course, the main reason for rambling on was because Chu Yang was worried. With so many children's books, would the Saber King think of the little girl? If he thought of the little girl, would he think of Mo Qingwu? If he thought of Mo Qingwu, wouldn't he be exposing himself? Thus, Minister Chu came up with a mountain of fog. Even if he was suspicious, he would talk until he was dizzy. But now, it seemed that the Saber King's brain was much worse than Diwu Qingrou's and Tai Bu Tian's. He was only a little impatient and did not have the slightest suspicion about the little girl. Minister Chu let out a sigh of relief, but at the same time, he also felt a little depressed. What was there to worry about? I wasted so much time talking to him. Now that they were talking about business, Chu Yang naturally had to think carefully about how to operate in order to get the most out of this situation. The Saber King was also depressed. If it was not necessary, why would he come to a secular country to ask for information from a family? This was too low of a price. The main reason was that after the Sword King was injured, Chu Yang sent people to deliver a large amount of medicine. At that time, the Saber King was out and did not have enough medicine, so he accepted it. After searching for a day and a half without any news about the enemy, the Saber King naturally thought of Butian Pavilion. If Chu Yang did not send people to deliver the medicine, the Saber King would not have thought of this. But now he could not think of anything else. Thus, he went to the chalk sect to ask for help. No matter what, the person who hurt his brother must be found and killed for revenge, to vent the hatred in his heart. But he did not know that the reason why Minister Chu sent the medicine was to wait for him to come to the chalk sect and extort him. Now that he was here, Minister Chu's wish came true. Why would he be polite? This matter, if it is done, it is not difficult. Chu Yang let out a long sigh. He was so angry that his eyebrows wrinkled like a lump of iron. Ah, this is great. The enemy came to beg me to kill another enemy that I would not be happy with. Moreover, I had to lower my voice and wait to be extorted. Oh? Minister Chu, if you have something to say, please say it. Senior, what is your name? Junior still doesn't know how to address you, so I apologize for my lack of manners. Chu Yang smiled faintly. We are from the Heimo clan. This old man is Saber King Soft Clouds. Minister Chu can call me Soft Clouds. You can also call me Senior. As for my surname, the Saber King's eyes were somewhat bleak. This old man has not mentioned it for many years. Chu Yang nodded in understanding. The Heimo clan was one of the three heavens clans. Chu Yang already knew this. Chu Yang also knew that the Heimo clan was not a clan, but an organization similar to a gang. Everyone who joined did not have their own name. They only had a title. They were all called Heimo. Only the strongest person could be called the clan leader. In other words, the Hayamo clan. If senior says so, then this junior will naturally obey. Chu Yong frowned and said, this junior is naturally willing to help senior. Not only that, after the battle between the two kings, this junior sent people to gather information. However, there is one thing that I am worried about. Senior's clan is strong, so naturally you will not think about it. But we are just secular officials. In the eyes of the strong, even if we are nobles, we are still like ants. Then the ensuing revenge is not something we can handle. Chu Yong said in a very honest tone, senior's visit today is equivalent to giving this official a great opportunity. How could I not know this? However, it is also a great risk. Opportunity. Danger. Dao Jiang stroked his beard, his eyes flashing. Before he came today, he only wanted to ask for help. Why would he want to give this person an opportunity? But now that he heard this, he understood that for Iron Cloud, in order to help him, going against the Mo clan was a great risk. Seems like he has to pay a price. While the Saber King was thinking, Chu Yong let out a long sigh and said, Senior Sword King has been very kind to me. That day before Senior Sword King left, I still remember what he said to me. Such a kind senior being plotted against by a despicable person. It really makes me sad and hateful. The Saber King coughed twice. His old face was a little red. The Sword King was a murderous person who killed without batting an eye. But in the eyes of this Chu Yong, he was a kind senior. Where did this come from? Someone who can go against senior's clan naturally has a strong backer. Chu Yong sighed. His words were vague. He looked at the Saber King with a burning gaze. This gaze strongly hinted to the Saber King. It's not that I can't do it, but if I do it, then there must be benefits. Let's see if you can move me. Chapter 147. This is hard to say. Chu Yong said with difficulty, you should know that Iron Cloud Citadel has hundreds of thousands of people. Among the 5 major districts, the noble districts are a bit easier to deal with, but the poor districts are like that. Even if 1,000 people went in, it would be like a fish returning to the sea or a tiger returning to the mountains. To find him, I'm afraid the entire citadel would need to be mobilized. The manpower and resources needed would be astronomical. If you can find this person, I can represent the Hayamo clan and promise you one thing. The Saber King quickly interrupted him. If Minister Chu continued, the entire Hayamo clan would not be able to repay this debt even if they worked hard. Senior's words are not correct. How could I be the kind of person to repay kindness? Chu Yong said with displeasure, you are looking down on me too much. The Saber King was angry and thought, you are already asking for too much. And you still say you are not the kind of person to repay kindness. King of Hell Chu rolled his eyes and changed the subject. He immediately put on a businesslike face. However, my Iron Cloud is currently facing internal and external troubles. It is really unstable. Great Zhao's Golden Horse Riders Department is eyeing my Butian Pavilion covetously. Plus, Golden Horse Riders Department has a king-level master in charge. This is very difficult. You want us to help you deal with Golden Horse Riders Department? The Saber King was stunned and said, this is not possible. His heart was bitter. This guy's first sentence was full of righteousness, but the second sentence was full of grievances. No. Minister Chu said with foresight. However, in the near future, Golden Horse Riders Department will certainly take action against my Butian Pavilion. There will not be many people coming, at most a dozen or so. Senior only needs to help me deal with these people. Only a dozen or so people. That's more like it. The Saber King thought for a moment and felt that this was feasible. Killing a dozen or so secular officials or ordinary masters in exchange for the life of a king-level master of the Mo clan, this was a very good deal. Then does Senior agree? Minister Chu wanted to strike while the iron was hot. He needed to make sure this matter was firm. I agree. The Saber King thought for a moment and finally decided. Senior is truly benevolent and righteous. To save the people from fire and water, to turn the tide from a desperate situation. To be so righteous, chivalrous and courageous. This Chu admires you endlessly. The millions of people of Iron Cloud are grateful. Minister Chu was moved to tears. Damn. I've been worried about this for so long, and now it's finally solved. Yes, you can rest assured. Although we can't help you deal with the entire Golden Horse Riders Department, but if the Golden Horse Riders Department sends people here, I can guarantee that they won't be able to leave. If one person comes, one person will die. If two come, two will die. The Saber King said generously. Chu Yang laughed and said, "That's right. Senior's divine power is matchless. Even if the Golden Horse Riders Department sent hundreds of people, they would only be able to create a few hundred more spirit tablets." Hundreds? Didn't you say there were 10 of them? The Saber King frowned. I'm talking about this group of people. Chu Yang heaved a long sigh. Who knows if 110, or even 100 of them will come? This is hard to calculate. The Saber King was speechless. Just now, this guy said there were at most a dozen people. Now, in the blink of an eye, he flipped his mouth and increased the number by 10 times. Moreover, there was no fixed number. Is this a motherfucking human's mouth? With just one flip of his mouth, he can say anything. One moment it was black and the next it was white as snow. No wonder he became an official at such a young age and a minister at that. Motherfucker, with just this mouth of his, he could be a prime minister. When the Saber King left Butian Pavilion, he was practically running away. His face was ashen. After this business deal with King of Hell Chu, I won't have any dealings with him ever again. What a scam. In Minister Chu's mouth, everything seemed reasonable and legal. He would first praise himself as a righteous hero. Then, he would praise himself as if he was in the clouds. But after a while, one would realize that he was praising himself. At first he only promised him one thing. Later on, he didn't know what happened, but in a roundabout way, he promised him several more things, especially the last sentence. Rest assured, Senior Saber King. For this matter, even though we are not strong enough, but for the sake of the Saber King's crimes, this official is willing to shed blood, climb a mountain of swords, dive into a sea of fire, and even die 10,000 times. Is there a need for compensation? Is there a need for any conditions? Saying these words is not only looking down on myself, but also insulting you, Senior. Senior, don't you think so? We have always treated each other with sincerity. Regretting that we didn't meet earlier. The two of us, who are we? Thinking about how King of Hell Chu patted his chest as if they were brothers, the Saber King's legs cramped. Is this not a condition? Finally, King of Hell Chu's words made the Saber King flee. Oh right, there is one more thing that is troubling me. Before he could finish his sentence, the Saber King hurriedly stood up and left. Motherfucker, you've already said 7 or 8 things that are troubling you, and I've already solved them for you. Now you still have one more thing to worry about. Are you done yet? Chu Yang finally let out a long sigh of relief. Done. However, this matter was not over yet. There was still a follow-up. Since such a big meat pie fell from the sky, of course he had to catch it. Next, Chu Yang went to the prison. The prison's security was the highest since the founding of Iron Cloud. But Chu Yang still felt that it was not enough. Frowning, he went in. After looking at the traps, Minister Chu became furious. He grabbed a few people in charge and scolded, "You call this a trap? Even if you were a hunter, you wouldn't be qualified." He scolded a few revered martial artists until they grimaced and their veins popped out. In King of Hell Chu's eyes, these traps could not be hidden from him. Plus, they were too weak to trap a master. In short, they were full of problems. One of them was from the Imperial Palace, and he actually said, "If we can't do it, then why don't you do it? Don't do anything, just use your mouth. Who doesn't know how to do it?" Chu Yang coldly looked at him and said, "Watch." He removed the camouflage on the surface of the trap. Although he didn't touch the blade at the bottom, he smeared poison on it. Then, he poured water into it so that only the tip of the blade was exposed. He even sprinkled some ecstasy on the water. Then he pulled a few tree branches over and propped up the surface of the trap with a schwa sound. After that, he waved his hand and rolled up some soil to cover the surface of the trap. Then he slowly extended his foot and left a very faint footprint on the surface of the trap. Then, he placed a hidden device in the air to ensure that when someone stepped on the trap, a piece of the roof would suddenly collapse. Moreover, it was not enough to cover the inside with ecstasy, dispersing powder and so on. There were also 10 powerful crossbow mechanisms on the roof. There were also many vicious traps in the east, west, north and south. In short, This trap was a collection of all the vicious traps from the past to the present. And the most outrageous thing was that it was filled with aphrodisiacs. According to Minister Chu's explanation, ecstasy, 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 and so on won't have much effect once one's martial power reaches the level of revered martial artist or above. But aphrodisiacs can't be taken care of even by emperor-level experts. Everyone thought of the enemies who fell into the trap. Their lower bodies were bulging, their faces were flushed, and their eyes were filled with longing for battle. And they shuddered in fear. Finally, King of Hell Chu regretfully said, "Oh, it's a pity that I can't confirm the time. Otherwise, I could have arranged a few barrels. The weather is also cold. Otherwise, I could have arranged a few poisonous snakes and insects." Everyone collapsed. Everyone felt that this trap was too excessive. But it was still not perfect in King of Hell Chu's eyes. After everything was done, Chu Yang insipidly asked, "How is it? Are you satisfied with this trap?" "Satisfied, I'm very satisfied." A group of experts nodded like chickens pecking at rice. They looked at Minister Chu with eyes full of fear. How could they be satisfied? They were absolutely terrified. "We can't fall into this guy's hands. Otherwise, it would be a fate worse than death. What's your name?" Chu Yang stared at the revered martial artist who was still somewhat unconvinced. "Chu Xiaoba." That revered martial artist said insipidly, "What advice does Minister Chu have for me? I don't dare to give you advice. But you can return to the Grand Prince's side." Chu Yang coldly said, "By the way, help me tell the Grand Prince that I can't afford to use his subordinates." "What?" Chu Xiaoba was shocked. "You heard it very clearly. You didn't hear it wrong." Chu Yang coldly said, "I don't want to see you again." "That's it." "Why? You have to give me a reason, right?" Li Xiaoba glared and asked. He was a little anxious. If he was sent back like this, there would be no good outcome for him at Tai Bu Tian's place. "I want to use people. I want them to obey me. I will never tolerate those who refuse to obey me." Chu Yang insipidly said. "And you dare to contradict me and question me. Then I don't need you. Could it be that you'd rather be treated like a yes-man than a master?" Zai Xiaoba was so angry that he didn't choose his words carefully. As soon as he finished speaking, there were angry gazes all around. "You're wrong. I'd rather have some mediocre people than a prickly pig." Chu Yang said mercilessly, "Now, get the hell out of here. If you dare to say another word, I will kill you without mercy." Di Xiaoba's chest heaved up and down. His eyes slowly became red. He clearly knew that as long as he left, his future in Iron Cloud would be over. "King of Hell Chu, don't go too far." Chu Xiaoba glared at Chu Yang. "Don't regret it. Kill." Chu Yang did not hesitate and directly ordered, "If you don't back down, you will be punished with the same crime and your clan will be implicated." Since this person refused to obey, then Chu Yang could use him to establish his prestige. He also wanted to let others see that even if they were the Grand Prince's subordinates, I, King of Hell Chu, would kill them. Who would dare to be disobedient in the future? This was an example. Moreover, at this critical moment, anyone's attitude was related to the success or failure of this big event. How could Chu Yang allow such a person to stay here? He could not stay, nor could he let him go. He could only kill him. Chapter 148. Suddenly a gloomy voice sounded. "Minister Chu doesn't need disobedient people, and His Highness doesn't need disobedient people either." Before the voice had even finished speaking, a shadow fell from the sky, and a crown suddenly appeared. This crown was actually very solid. A gloomy mist suddenly shrouded the area, and instantly turned into a huge palm, slapping down on Chu Xiaoba's head. "Mastering!" Before Chu Xiaoba could finish begging for mercy, he was already turned into a pile of meat paste under this huge palm. This happened so suddenly that the experts who were rushing over after Chu Yang gave the order were still in midair, but this side was already done. That big hand slowly withdrew and returned to midair. Then it turned into a thin layer of mist. A shadow floated in the mist and said, "Minister Chu, if you don't agree with me, then you can just kill them." Chu Yang smiled and said, "Please tell His Highness that I know." The shadow nodded in the mist, and suddenly flew away, disappearing without a trace. This move of the shadow could be said to be a huge deterrent. Everyone was looking at Chu Yang. Their expressions had already turned into one of fear. Chu Yang smiled bitterly, thinking that Tai Butian had tried to be clever but ended up making a fool of himself this time. Originally, this matter was enough for Chu Yang to deal with, but Tai Butian's move, although clearly well-intentioned, had indirectly weakened Chu Yang's authority. If Tai Butian had followed his plan and let these people surround and kill Jing Xiaoba, the effect would have been much better than now. Entering the prison cell, Chu Yang looked at the curled-up body in silence. One of the prisoners was a death row inmate who had been tortured to the point that he did not look human anymore. He had lost the ability to speak. According to Tai Butian's plan, this person was to pretend to be Tang Xiansheng. But Chu Yang still felt that something was wrong. This is the best opportunity. Chu Yang silently looked at the gloomy prison cell, and silently calculated in his heart. But to pretend to be Tang Xiansheng here is too dangerous. How should I think of a way to get the best of both worlds? Chu Yang frowned and thought for a long time. Everyone stood quietly behind him, not daring to breathe too loudly for fear of disturbing his thoughts. Perfect all the traps again. The next time I come, if any of the traps are not up to standard, then the person who set them can leave. Before Chu Yang left, he left behind a sentence. But it was this one sentence that sent chills down everyone's spines. Over the next few days, Chu Yang was busy running back and forth in the mornings to arrange for the capture of Yinwu Fa. In the afternoons, he continued to challenge people. His hard work paid off. Chu Yang's soft water power was finally beginning to be used in his moves. Although there was still a long way to go before he could integrate it into his cultivation technique, it was already a huge improvement. Furthermore, his cultivation realm was also constantly increasing. In just 5 days, he had already become a grade 3 martial warrior. This kind of improvement made even a king-level master like Mo Changyu speechless. He had never seen such an improvement before. This was simply a monster. Every night, Chu Yang would teach Mo Qingwu how to practice the saber. He would point out her shortcomings, and then he would tell her stories. One adult and one child, one moment they would be speaking harshly, and the next moment they would be intimately intimate with each other. The results of Chu Yang's hard work during this period of time were finally showing. In Mo Qingwu's eyes, Big Brother Chu Yang was becoming more and more knowledgeable. No matter if it was in heaven or on earth. Since ancient times, all the fantasy stories, all the love stories, all the stories, Big Brother Chu Yang knew how to tell them all. Little Qingwu was now worshipping Big Brother Chu Yang more and more. Although Big Brother Chu Yang's requirements for her cultivation were a bit strict, Mo Qingwu, who was born in a big clan, knew that strength was the only thing that made people look at her with respect. If she was only beautiful, then she would only be a femme fatale, so she did not have any complaints. Every time she finished practicing the saber, she would listen to stories and play games. She would relax even more. Mo Changyu looked at one adult and one child, one talking and the other listening. They were all children's stories that made his teeth ache. His worries were getting deeper and deeper. If it was before, he would not have thought so. But now he had no choice but to think about it. Chu Yang's speed of improvement was simply inhuman. Mo Changyu could imagine that if this speed continued, then Chu Yang could become a king-level master within a year. He would not have the slightest doubt. If he could maintain this speed, then he would not even need to maintain it. He could just slow down a bit. Mo Changyu absolutely believed that Chu Yang could climb to the throne of the #1 master in the world within 20 years. The meaning of the world included the lower 3 heavens, the upper 3 heavens, and even the upper 3 heavens. Chu Yang's love for Mo Qingwu could be seen at a glance. But this time, when Mo Qingwu returns to the clan, would the clan believe his words and continue to let Mo Qingwu enjoy the 3 meridian treatment? Mo Changyu was not sure. But one thing was for sure. If the clan treated the little miss unfairly, then Chu Yang's monstrous wrath would be ignited. Such a young master with unlimited potential was not someone any clan would want to deal with. If Mo Qingwu was really wronged by the clan, then Chu Yang's current strength was too weak to do anything. But when he had the ability, then he would be a disaster for the entire Emoda clan. How could Mo Changyu not see through Chu Yang's character after this period of interaction? This was definitely a lawless person. Moreover, he would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Plus, he was young and had no background, but he was already powerful in the lower 3 heavens. Who knew if it would be the same in the upper 3 heavens? One thing was for sure, if Chu Yang's cultivation speed was spread out, then all the clans in the upper three heavens would do anything to recruit him. With Chu Yang's character, he would not join any clan. He would only create his own power. Mo Chengyu knew this very well. But if the Mo clan pushed him too hard, then Chu Yang would take the risk and risk everything for revenge. There was no reason and no one knew why. Chu Yang cared too much about the little miss. He cared so much that he would risk everything, even himself. This kind of care was scary. Mo Chengyu had a feeling that if something happened to Mo Qingwu in the clan, then Chu Yang's vengeance would not stop until he was dead. Mo Chengyu shuddered and stopped himself from thinking further. But he was sure that if Chu Yang found out that he could not deal with the Mo clan, then he would definitely do something like this. If the little miss was fine, then the Mo clan would have a heaven-shaking helper. But if something happened to the little miss, then the clan would have the most terrifying enemy in the world. Mo Chengyu smiled bitterly. The problem was that if he told the clan about this, who would believe him? They would probably think he was crazy. Day after day, Mo Chengyu's injuries were getting better, but he was also becoming more and more troubled. When he found out that Chu Yang had unknowingly broken through to the 4th grade martial artist realm, this troubled feeling became more and more serious. It almost became a mental illness. There was also another worry. Mo Tianyun and Mo Tianji, the two young masters, were nowhere to be seen. There was no news at all. What happened to them? Time passed quickly and 3 days had passed. 7 days had passed since the Battle of the Kings. Chu Yang did not go out because the fastest speed on a horse from Great Zhao to Iron Cloud was in the next day. If Diwu Qingrou's actions were fast enough, then by the day after tomorrow, the Masters of Golden Horse Riders Department would arrive at Iron Cloud. An extremely dangerous battle was about to unfold, whether it was in the open or in the dark. After this battle, Iron Cloud would be completely cleansed. The people that Chu Yang had already placed under his control would all be killed after this battle. On the morning of the 8th day, before Chu Yang could get out of bed, there was a sound coming from outside Heavenly Armament Pavilion. It seemed that someone had entered. Chu Yang hurriedly put on his clothes and went out. He happened to see Gu Duxing and a few people coming in. Gu Duxing's face was as cold as ice, and he stood straight like a zombie. When he saw Chu Yang, his eyes shined brightly with a faint trace of heat. "Big brother." "Zhang Buxian." Gu Duxing stepped forward and bowed deeply. Gu Duxing naturally knew that he and Chu Yang did not need to be so polite and respectful. But this group of people had just arrived, so they needed to give Chu Yang absolute authority. Especially since Chu Yang's martial power was not as good as theirs, this action was absolutely necessary. Sure enough, this bow made the 5 people behind him turn pale with fright. Who was Gu Duxing? Among them, Gu Duxing's progress was the fastest, and he was also the toughest. He was also the most arrogant and unruly. But now, Gu Duxing was actually so respectful to this young man. In a split second, everyone felt a sense of awe. "These people are the subordinates that I found." Gu Duxing stretched out his hand and introduced coldly. "Hey, Lonely. I already said that I'm only here to help." GMO shouted in dissatisfaction. "Shut up." Gu Duxing turned around and glared, his eyes flashing fiercely. "Do you believe that I won't beat you to death?" GMO shrank back and said, "Besides using this to threaten me, what else can you do? What did you say?" Gu Duxing shouted. GMO was speechless. This is GMO, a troublemaker. He is the second young master of the Ji clan, and also the first young master Ji Wutian's punching bag. He has the temper of a mule, but he is very afraid of being beaten. Gu Duxing solemnly introduced. He also uses a sword, but he is not good at it. He is much worse than me. These words caused the 3 people behind him to burst into laughter. "What nonsense are you talking about?" GMO looked at Gu Duxing with a red face. "Can't you leave me some face?" GMO? Chu Yang looked at this pure GMO, and his eyes lit up. From head to toe he was covered in green.